Media Center to live stream. Does anybody else want to record the meeting? Okay, with that, I want to welcome everybody who is in attendance and probably who will be attending throughout the evening. I will recognize you as you come up and make your presentations. Let me make a few introductory comments before we stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. This is our final public hearing in preparation for town meeting on May 1st. And at the end of the hearing, what happens is we adjourn to review, deliberate, and vote on all the warrant articles before us. And I want to make sure that during the presentations tonight, or this public hearing, FinCom members get answers to any remaining questions they have or issues or concerns they have about the warrant articles. This truly has been a very, very challenging year for the preparation of the FY24 town and school budgets. And I clearly want to thank town and school administrators, department heads, staff, the select board, and the school committee for their efforts to produce a proposed balanced and sustainable budget. And we are changing the order a little bit tonight since we have not had a public hearing on the revised
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. I am here tonight with Tony Mullen, who is the vice chair of the Westwood School Committee.
I'm sorry, Emily,
Yes.
I forgot the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And one procedural issue, I have to do a roll call, which we will do, and then we will have you start. So will you do the roll call, please?
John Kerry.
Here.
Jim Ferrero.
Present.
Lauren Fitzpatrick.
Present.
Mike Gay.
Present.
George Hertz.
Present.
Angela Hughes.
Here.
George Laham.
Here. Here.
Here.
George Marone.
Here.
Christina. Here. Chris Peretta.
Present.
Sean Weller. And Alex Yale.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, Madam Superintendent.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as the chair explained, when I was last here, I think it was early to mid-February when I presented to FinCom, and the budget was a little bit different at that point. When your education subcommittee presented to you more recently, the revisions to the budget had occurred, and so the subcommittee's report was based on that revised budget. So my job tonight really is just to quickly underscore what those changes were to make sure we're clear on those. So just to remind everybody, we have had a challenging time. It's been a bit of a journey getting the FY24 budget developed. There are really three drivers that we've been dealing with on the school side, and these, of course, I think are experienced on the town side as well. So we're experiencing increased costs due to inflationary pressures. We've had a significant increase in our heating fuel costs, about 30% increase over FY22. I do want to mention that as we look to FY24, we really are budgeting based on the usage that we're seeing and the current rates. So I appreciated that comment from the FinCom a couple weeks ago. We aren't speculating what we think those rates will be, but we're looking at our current usage and seeing this level of increase. We've had increases in our transportation contracts, in our special ed transportation contract also. Big driver, we've seen significantly increased costs in special education due to a couple things, some unexpected tuitions that we had not budgeted for students who need out-of-district placements on their IEPs, and then also this 14% increase in private out-of-district tuitions for FY24. So when I talked to you in February, that was just a projected increase that we had been told by the Operational Services Division that we should be prepared for. The information about tuition rates has now been issued by OSD, and that 14% has been realized. And then we've had some unknown salary increases. This is particularly significant in a school department's operating budget where 85% of the total budget goes to salaries. We were making some assumptions about unsettled contracts in order to try to hit budget deadlines, and those assumptions and whether or not they came to fruition has been part of the story of sort of the changing landscape of the budget. Since I was here in mid-February, our teachers' contract has been ratified, our instructional assistants contract has been ratified. We are currently in negotiations with our ABA tutors, and we will be negotiating with food services shortly. But the biggest change is that we received new, very positive information about estimated revenue, and that is that sometime in mid-February, Governor Healy's proposed state budget was released, and at that same time, they released the estimated Chapter 70 allocations. And Chapter 70, of course, is the way that the state provides aid to K-12 schools, to local districts. It does not come directly to schools. It flows through the municipality and is sort of part of the overall picture of the operating budget for Westwood. The news that we got in mid-February is that Westwood's Chapter 70 estimate had been significantly increased, and it was much higher than the budgeting assumption that we had been operating with in our budget steering conversations. And so I just put up a little graph here to show you. You can see our estimated FY24 Chapter 70 is, that's a bigger increase than we typically see year over year by quite a bit. So this was a fantastic problem to have at that point, to revise the budget to reflect that new assumption. We had conversations with the Budget Steering Committee about how to apply that Chapter 70 allocation, and I very much appreciate that a significant portion of that increase we were allowed to incorporate into our school budget. And so now the proposed budget here is a 5.8% increase over FY23. That is, so we had presented a 4.5% increase. This change between 4.5 and 5.8% is entirely related to incorporating that Chapter 70 money from the state. So that doesn't reflect anything more for the taxpayers of Westwood. If we take a look at the recommended budget, what's sort of grayed out here in the center is what I had talked to you about in February. This boxed budget is what the subcommittee discussed with you at your last meeting. And you can see that the primary difference here is that whereas in February I was talking about having to reduce a significant number of professional positions, we basically have been able to restore those positions in the final budget. So how has that increased Chapter 78 been incorporated? It's really a reflection of three things. As I said, we're able to restore staffing cuts proposed at the February school committee meeting and to fund the salary increases for teachers and paraprofessionals with those settled contracts. That represents about $363,000. The other two are significant in other ways. So we had initially thought that we were going to be using a one-time federal IDA grant that's related to special education, $200,000 to fund our paraprofessional salaries, our instructional assistants. We had that as an offset in the budget. And happily now, we are able to revert to the original plan for that money, which is to help us close this fiscal year with those unexpected special ed tuitions, and instead to fund those paraprofessional salaries using a recurring revenue source, which is really a much better plan. Similarly, we had 1.2 FTE elementary adjustment counselor positions that we were using one-time ESSER 3 grant funding to fund. ESSER 3 was federal COVID relief to schools. And now, again, we're able to fund those salaries with recurring dollars. And really, that's important for two reasons. We're kind of solving a problem for FY24, but also we're creating a much improved position for FY25, and I think this is something at the last meeting that Jim sort of astutely commented on, that we were able to say, all right, let's not rely on one-time grant funds to fund positions, which creates a structural deficit in the budget. We were aware that that's what we were doing. We were in a pinch and trying to solve some problems. But it was, setting up some issues for FY25. And now the savings that we realized from positions in FY '25 due to the consolidation of Hanlon Deerfield, that we thought we were going to have to apply to filling that deficit, will be available to fund the agreed-upon contractual salary increases, and also, I think, lessen the risk of the district sort of being back here in this moment again and having to talk about staffing cuts. So I think it's a good foundation going into FY '25. I feel good about that. And finally, no change has happened since February in the capital budget slide. You can see not much changes over time in the capital budget slide. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Since your budget really becomes part of Article 3, I'll ask the FinCom members, are there any questions that any members have about the school budget?
If I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. On your first page, you said you're undergoing ABA negotiations and soon to be doing food service contract. Do you feel that those numbers will come in within the projected budget that were before us?
I think so. So I would just say those are much smaller bargaining units than, for instance, the teachers. So even if our estimate was off by something, the overall impact on the budget would be much less than what we experienced with those other two bargaining units. The ABA tutors we're collective bargaining with for the very first time. We're starting from a blank piece of paper, so it's a little harder to project on that. But yeah, food services, I think will come in just fine.
Thank you.
Yes, Chris?
So Emily, I just want to make a note on the capital budget. I noticed that it's been level funded for 5 years.
Yes.
And it's not just the schools. If you look at the municipal capital budgets, it's also level funded. And if you go back over time, it looks like we generally do this. You know, we come up to a level, stay there for a couple of years, bump up to a next level. So it looks like we're ready for another bump. So I'm just, you know, this is no, individually, each one of these items changes year to year, but overall the total is the same. But we want to make sure that we don't underfund our maintenance and our capital expenditures.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, that you're correct about the trend, and if I went back a few more years on this chart, you would see that it had been level funded at, I think, $867,000 for a
Right.
number of years, and so there was sort of one big jump. And I think that was a recognition at the time that the level of annual capital funding wasn't enough to keep up with the maintenance needs. So this has been much better. We've experienced that positively. I will say that when Lemma submitted the school's capital budget for this year, it was more like $1.5 million.
Correct.
And then we kind of worked to shave that down, and we effectively back into this number and say, okay, we have lots and lots of needs. Let's see what we can get done and think about what our priorities are for this year. I will say that the other capital article has been, in my experience, the way the town has kind of managed this level capital budget, that each year we sort of say, all right, what are, you know, maybe one or two big needs, big projects that we can't fund within the annual capital budget, and let's try to, you know, pick off some of those priorities that way.
Do it on the other capital article.
Yeah, and that has actually been really helpful for us, and when we talk about sort of the, you know, the 5-year look ahead, when we're talking at budget steering, we foreshadow, you know, for instance, the network upgrade. We've been saying for years, this is coming up at this time, and the other capital articles, the mechanism for funding it.
I know that Chapter 70 is calculated using an enormously complicated formula.
Yes.
What's your assessment? Was this a one-time bump, or structurally, are we going to see this level of funding on a Chapter 70 going forward?
So I don't believe you'll see a regression in the funding level, literally. It's hard for me to imagine that you're going to continue to see that size of increases. But I will say, so there was a piece of legislation, the Student Opportunity Act, passed in FY19, and it really was supposed to infuse more money into K-12, and they have funding targets. There was a structured sort of multi-year plan to get up to the target, and we're still, I think, 2 years away from that final year. As you point out, though, that Chapter 70 formula is pretty opaque. It's hard to figure out, and there are other very comparable communities to us that experienced similar increases, and then there are other communities that got virtually nothing. And so,
Cash the check while you can.
yeah, it's a little hard to predict what happens year to year. But this was our year, so we'll take it.
All right, that's it. George?
A couple questions, spinning off of what Mr. Parita said. At one point, about $1 million this year for the capital budget, with the school being built, which is gonna consolidate two schools that needed a lot of capital work, wouldn't that kind of drive part of it down while the other costs go up to flatline it for next year instead of a bump? Because if we got two schools that are brand new, well, I'm sorry, if we have one school that's brand new, consolidate, we're not gonna be doing capital to keep the other two schools with Band-Aids.
Yeah. So what I would say, George, is that I think that a couple of things are going to happen. One is we're going to need to really invest in the brand new building as well, right? So I think there will be ongoing maintenance expenses associated with that building because we want to protect our asset. But the bigger issue is that we have had to prioritize the use of this annual capital budget towards those aging buildings.
The Shan specifically.
Well, I mean, frankly, Hanlon, Deerfield, Sheehan, and the middle school. Let's not forget about the middle school. And really what this means is now we'll be able to sort of shift the allocation and prioritize Sheehan and Thurston, which, you know, we have to keep the HVAC going at those buildings for the near future. So I think it's good news because we'll be able to reallocate
Yeah.
money in that direction. Yeah.
And my second question was a kind of a clarification. It's a 5.8% increase, but as you said, it wasn't a burden on the town because we're getting roughly 640,000 from chapter 70? Chapter 70.
Yes.
And I can understand if there isn't, but is there a way to kind of carve it out? Because I'm sure people are gonna wanna know nobody's gonna understand chapter 70. They're gonna see a 5.8% increase. So is there a way to see what percentage that 640 brought it up?
Well, so it literally took it from 4.5 to 5.8.
okay.
So, I mean, that is what it is. I mean, in our budget, it's 54 million, so
Yep.
it's about 50 grand every 1/10%, right? So I think that math.
Yeah, and the last thing is,
Yep.
I want to thank you, I know this is your swan song here, so I want to thank you. You've been great to work with over the past few years. And I think, you know, I'm sure the committee did a great job with the new hire, but we're losing a great asset here, so I appreciate as being in the town, as also being one of your, you were my student teacher when I was in high school, so I really.
Vern's doing the math now on how old I am, George. Okay.
That's nice,
Yeah.
George.
But we're losing a great asset, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful working with FinCom, and I think that the school committee has selected an excellent superintendent for Westwood. So.
And Emily, I want to reiterate what George said. I've had the opportunity of working very closely with you this year on budget steering, and both you and Lim Baptiste really deserve special recognition. So good luck to you in your new endeavors.
Thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to welcome the Mr. Coleman, Town Administrator, and I see Stephanie's here. And I don't know, and I know that Chairman Gotti, due to family illness, was not able to be here. Is there a select board member here or not here? No? Okay, I don't see that. Yep. So they sent the A team. So welcome, Mr. Coleman, welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jump right into it.
Do you have a pointer?
It's not a party. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
It is
Yes.
pretty good.
So, Mr. Chair, I believe we will have Select Board Member Walsh attending. I think he's just running a little
We
late.
will welcome him when he comes, okay?
All right. Thank you all for having us here. I'm going to go through the financial warrant articles for town meeting. So, similar to past years, the FY '24 proposed budget is a comprehensive plan that effectively allocates resources among the different priorities. The town is able to maintain a high level of service to the community through the operating budget, which includes, as we just heard from the superintendent, the school budget at 5.8% increase, the municipal budget at a 4.6, and then fixed costs also at a 4.6. The base capital budget, which we just heard a little bit about from the schools, includes also municipal, and they are both able to be funded through free cash and are funded, as we just mentioned, at the same level as the previous fiscal year. So about 1.3 for the municipal side and about a little over 1 for the school. We also have supplemental capital items. Some are funded with the meals and hotel tax revenue. That is also as previously done in years. And in this town and school projects currently for FY '24 are at 1.1 million. Then we have sewer capital improvements at 1.2, which are funded with sewer retained earnings, and other capital improvements, specifically ambulance, at 445,000, which is funded with ambulance receipts. The town also has liability and reserves that are being addressed through articles that allocate funding to the stabilization fund through free cash, and then OPEB trust fund through taxation. And then there are also 3 borrowing articles that I will go through in more detail later on in the presentation. One is a fire department replacement of ladder 1 truck, a cemetery expansion, the construction portion of the project. Last year, town meeting funded the design piece. And then also the sewer I&I program, the inflow and infiltration, which, as I'll explain later, will be done through a MWRA loan. So this is just a breakdown of all the revenue sources that fund the FY '24 budget articles. The revenues equal the proposed expenditures in order to create a balanced budget. So for FY '24, that proposed revenue budget is $121 million, which is about a 6.6% increase over the current year. As you can see, 80% of the overall revenue is funded through taxation, which is pretty typical of a suburban community in Massachusetts. And then this is just a summary of the proposed expenditures, which also is $121 million, again, about a 6.6% increase over the current fiscal year FY '23. The operating budget is the largest piece, as you can see in blue, it's 65%. And then the chart below just shows the change in spending for the different categories. And I will point out one item that might jump out at the 32% increase for the debt service is because the portion of the Hanlon Deerfield project is being paid. The first payment is due for FY '24 for the debt service. And now I'm just going to walk through the 13 articles that cover the financial section of the warrant.
Stephanie, can I just make one request? As
Sure.
you go after each article, why do we then open it up for questions so we don't have to get all the way to the end, okay?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Great. So I should go back. Article 1 and 2 are cleanup items for the current fiscal year. And traditionally, Article 1, I believe, has been used for snow and ice. This year, we've been having a great winter so far, so we don't see a need to supplement the snow and ice budget through this article. And so right now, we are requesting no transfer needed for this. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I know town council will probably answer this, but why do we even need it if we're not gonna transfer it?
Well, I think he's asking, why do we even have to have Article 1 if it's...
If it's 0, it seems like we're gonna ask the town meeting to vote 0.
Yes.
Thank you.
You've also done that in the past?
Yes, this has
So-
happened in the past. This is not completely out of the norm. I believe, and yes, please chime in if I'm incorrect, but it's also just in case if
something happens
something
between
came up
now
at
and town
town
meeting,
meeting, it could be,
There have been times when, at the 11th hour, we've had to fund a certain amount to cover the previous year's expense.
Yeah, there have
and if
been
an
years,
article
I mean,
exists, there could
Yes.
be an amendment to it, yes.
We're about 11:50 right now, so that's, we got 10 minutes left before.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
yeah.
So any other questions on Articles 1 and 2?
I'll go through Article 2 and
Okay,
that's,
fine.
yeah. So this is used for the current fiscal year budget adjustments. We are requesting a total of $598,000 to supplement these appropriations listed, and I'll go through them piece by piece. So the first few items on here are funded through free cash, which will total $393,000. The Council on Aging, the COA salary budget, we increased this for FY24 to keep up with increased demand activity, especially after COVID, for van driver services, which is a great thing. And we're also asking for a supplement to the current fiscal year budget, also due to that increased demand and activity. The fire department, this has come, I believe, in the last year or two. This is not new, but we've seen the impact of the Norwood Hospital closure. It's still affecting the ongoing operations of the fire department, so we're just asking for a supplement to that budget. The police department salary, just based on potential turnover-related expenses. And then the next two items are related to the school, the Special Education Reserve Fund, which has been done in the past, I believe it was about 4 or 5 years ago. We're asking for $100,000 to be allocated there. It's due to just a lot of unfunded mandates and the current fund being depleted. McKinney-Vento is a transportation-related item for homeless children that are in the district, and that is also, again, just unfunded, and the current fund that they have has been depleted. And then moving on, so the next few items are being funded through ambulance receipts for a total of $120,000. There is an annual ambulance supplement. This is the way the budget goes. We budget a certain amount, and then towards the end of the year, when we see what we've actually spent, a supplement is added to that fire department ambulance expense budget. So that's $103,000. And then $17,000 will go for the collector's department. They actually do a billing service on behalf for the ambulance, so we reimburse that budget as well. And then the final item is one that comes up it used to be every 3 years, it's now every 5 years. Our assessing department does a revaluation service, and this year it's going to be $85,000, and we're asking for that to come from the overlay, which has been done in previous years.
So are there any questions from members?
I have one,
Yes.
just on the impact of the Norwood Hospital closure. I understand the ambulances bill a flat rate plus mileage, so would the ambulance receipts offset a portion of that additional expense?
Say that one more, so
So on the impact of the Norwood Hospital closure, I know the ambulances charge a flat rate plus mileage.
Yep.
So I'd expect that part of the reason that the expenses have gone up is that they're having to go further. They're also charging for that. So is there an increase in ambulance receipts that offsets that cost?
so there
Also staff.
there's two different items. We're using ambulance receipts to fund the ambulance expenses that we've incurred, part of which is due to the Norwood Hospital closure. The other item is the actual fire department salary budget, which is a lot of staff overtime, and that's where that expense is coming from, why it's coming from two different locations to be funded.
So in lieu of transporting a patient to Norwood Hospital, they have to transport a patient to other hospitals, which provides some additional downtime.
Got it, okay,
So that's where
thank you.
not downtime, excuse me, where the backup coverage may have to come in. That's where the overtime costs come in.
Okay, before we start on Article 3, one comment for the public to be aware of. This commission has had multiple meetings with Mr. Coleman and with Stephanie on the budget, really starting last fall. And in our subcommittee reports, all of our subcommittees have reviewed the respective budgets, and we went through those reports on March 14th. So to some extent, we've already seen a lot of this material. There will be questions that will be asked, but this does not reflect how intensive our work has been, especially with Ms. Stephanie and with Mr. Coleman. Okay,
Yes?
so let's go to Article 3.
And,
Do you have a question?
I've not heard the term overlay surplus before.
Okay.
Can you enlighten me?
So the overlay is a budget that we allocate funds to each year, and through the assessing and collectors department, we do abatements, residential and personal property abatements and exemptions. So that fund is there for when those items come up. And then this service, this specifically for the reval every 5 years that's done through assessing, we use some of the funds that are above anything we have left over after those abatements and exemptions. And we go through the Board of Assessors to get their approval first. We do a memo through them. I believe in previous years it might have gone to the Select Board, although I have to check that. But they meet and go over it and have to approve the release of the funds first. That's the first step. And then through Article 2, we get approval to actually make that transfer.
All right, great, thank you.
Just one more question?
Of course.
On the McKinney-Vento,
Sure.
the 100,000, is that a contingency line item, or is that something that are we serving a homeless contingent now?
No, it's a good question. It's a complicated answer. I know that it can pop up at any point in the year. I believe I was speaking with, I don't know if you
I'm
want.
happy to speak to
Okay.
that. Yeah. So McKinney-Vento refers to a federal law that outlines districts' obligations to we say students in transition. So that
Thank
means
you.
students who are homeless. It's often students who've been placed by DCF, maybe into foster care. And so under the law, they have the right to attend the district in which they are currently residing or to return to the last district where they were residing. And so this is the transportation expense associated with that. And yes, we do currently have students who we are transporting under that law. And the McKinney-Vento account has been depleted at this point.
Okay, so it's not just a contingency?
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
okay.
Actually, that reflects.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it reflects real expenses that will occur next year, probably not up to the total amount, but, so that we don't come like year after year after year, we have this reserve.
Thank you.
And that has been done in previous years before, where it's funded and then that carries the schools through 2 or 3 years.
Just use it until it's depleted and then
Yes.
you
Yeah, it is unfortunately at a deficit right now, so
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, great. So Article 3 is the operating budget for all town departments, and it's referred to often as Appendix D. So for FY '24, the proposed operating budget is $112.2 million, which is a 6.6% increase over the current year. The areas that make up the operating budget are the schools, municipal, fixed costs, debt service, sewer, and then also some assessments such as Blue Hills Regional School. The largest area spending is the schools at $54.7 million, shown in blue, and then the municipal budget is shown in yellow at the $23.6 million. The next few slides, as the chair just mentioned, show the full Appendix D, which we've gone over in detail with the different subcommittees for the different departments. It's the line items for each department's salary expenses. And it's just for a reference. If you don't mind, I might just flip through it. And then just on the last slide, you can see that total amount of the 112.2. So does anyone have any questions specifically on that as a whole?
Just real quick,
Yes.
the debt servicing line item?
Yes,
Does that include all the debt, including the most recently issued?
correct. So it's all debt payments that we will be making in FY '24, including the first year of the school project.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
You want questions on the
Yeah,
detail?
sure, absolutely.
All right, so, 2 questions.
Yes.
The Council on Aging has gone up by 10%, which was different than what was originally proposed, so what
Yes.
accounted for that increase?
We presented to the select board at the last meeting, and I hope I sent along the slides with the updates for this. This was part of when the additional funding came in through Chapter 70 in state aid. Part of that went towards, as I said, it's just increased activity, the van drivers
transportation
specifically.
Oh, okay.
Which is a good thing. It means people are utilizing the services. And so we've supplemented the current budget in Article 2, and then we have also added to the budget for FY '23. And added to the budget for FY '24 moving forward to right-size what they actually have at a service level right now.
All right, and similarly, with the budget for outside professional services, you added a lot.
We did. We are anticipating, some of that is used for legal services, and
Right.
we're anticipating potentially
Yes.
some, I don't know if you want to speak to that, if there's anything in particular.
Well, there are a number of
Never
different,
budget too much.
Yeah.
spoken like a true attorney.
For that
Yeah. So we are
particular-
anticipating, but if we don't need it in legal services, then we can use it elsewhere. So
Yes.
that's what we have it. We have it in that account, so we can use it for other professional services, but the idea is to use it for legal. But if Pat can do what he's been doing, then we may not need it, so.
But that, again, that came from the additional
The
chapter
additional,
7 money.
yes,
Yes.
yes. So the town received an additional, approximately about 20% of that
Yeah.
funding. and that's what we applied it to.
And you just hit on the two major items that we made a change on, so.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Stuart, do you have a question? You all set?
Oh, no, I'm also, it was him.
I have two questions.
Go.
The health insurance is going up 5.5%, is that fine, is that number final now from the
It
GIC?
is, it is, which is great. We were originally estimating about an 8% increase, so when the actual figures came in for the GIC plan, it went down, and we were very happy with that, so.
Great. And then I noticed the select board reserve fund went up by 20%?
Yes.
What's driving that?
So that was actually the third item that we were able, it was partially due to the health insurance coming down. We allocated some funds towards that. It's been level funded for a number of years. Where currently, we've gone a few times already this year. That's sort of our fund that we use for things that come up, unanticipated expenses. And we have a few items related to unsettled contracts and a few other issues that we foresee coming in '24 that we're just hoping to add some funds to that.
Okay. Thanks.
And if it's not used, it just closes out with free cash.
Okay.
It's also your aid to the elderly coming out of that fund.
It has in previous years. I'm sorry, actually, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So the town has an aid to the elderly program that has been funded through the town?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think it's come out of the select budget
It has
last
in the
year.
past, but that was allocated its own funding source. I believe it was at the previous town meeting, 300,000 was.
That was a one-time
It was a
contribution.
one-time
it's
contribution.
not
So
coming-
now, for the foreseeable future, it'll actually come out of that and not the reserve, the select board reserve.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to some capital articles now. The base capital budget, this is just a history in how we've been investing in buildings, equipment, and assets over the last couple of years. I know this was brought up previously. We do find it important to maintain the assets of the school and town. For the last couple of years, as you can see, it's been level funded. We are continuing to hopefully reach the policy target through our financial policies. In FY '24 is level funded at the 2.3 million. And this is just a breakdown. I know you've seen the school side, but this is the municipal base capital budget, and it's a list of projects and equipment through Article 4 totaling 1.3 million, funded with free cash as been done previous years. It's a standard listing just to maintain the technology, building, and equipment on the town side. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know we've seen this a number of times.
Let me just make one comment. We actually set up a special subcommittee just dealing with capital. So we have, and actually, the vice chair, Chris Pareda, chaired that subcommittee.
Yes.
So we have reviewed all the capital items collectively. So this is just sort of a final pass-through of all the material we've already seen and reviewed. So,
Correct.
thank you. So we can move on, I think, to Article 5.
Okay. And the superintendent did a great job already of going over this. It's the school-based capital at the just over 1 million. If anyone has any questions on that.
Any questions on Article 5? Okay, we'll go on to Article 6.
Great. So this is the sewer capital improvements, and as I said previously, this is funded specifically through sewer retained earnings, so the sewer enterprise fund, and it totals just over 1.2 million. This includes stormwater compliance, keeping up with maintenance of the pump stations, and also 2 trucks.
Questions?
This is also, Article 7 is also related to sewer. It's at the capital borrowing side. So this is for $500,000. The MWRA has a very generous program that offers municipalities loans and grant options. So we're seeking to go through that for our I&I, inflow and infiltration, which is improvements to the town's wastewater collection system. And I know this is a lot of information on this slide. We've added just the language, the article language, and then sort of what you would be voting to approve as far as borrowing. The motion, sorry, thank you. If anyone has, and sorry, I should say 75% of it will be grant program, and then 25% is an zero interest
Does
loan.
town council have to review this out of curiosity?
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
so
Yep,
it's just a
everything, Everything we do for borrowing, the language and the
This has already
motions
been
are
already
all
reviewed.
vetted through
That's
bond
right.
council.
Okay, thank you.
And this has been done previously.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So,
So then, moving on to just the additional capital articles beyond the base, this is just a little bit of background on that. Since FY '17, town meeting has approved additional capital budget articles. Right, this year for FY '24, we're requesting 1.1 million. This is an effort to fund capital that has been deferred from previous years, as well as, larger items that just don't fit into the base capital.
any questions on Article 8?
I'll go to Article 8. So the first one is specifically related to ambulance items. There are two pieces of equipment here, or sorry, one piece of equipment in ambulance, and then rescue equipment upgrade and replacement for a total of $445,000, and that is funded specifically through ambulance receipts. Okay.
Yes, any questions? Okay,
Article 9 is additional capital improvements. This is for DPW buildings and school. It totals 1.1 million, as I said. There is a piece of equipment for DPW, various library projects related to the building, and then also two school projects. We're able to do a network upgrade, and then also the high school auditorium repairs. And these are all funded through meals and hotel tax revenue.
any questions? You're all set.
Right. So Article 10, this is an appropriation to the stabilization fund. That is a fund that the town is the town's main reserve account. It's an important piece of the current AAA rating that we currently have. And for FY '24, the amount is $125,000, which is in line with previous allocations. It's funded through free cash. As you can see, set through the town's financial policies, we have a target that we are looking to reach. Any questions on that?
Any questions on 10? You're on a roll. Keep going.
Article 11, this is for the OPEB liability trust fund. So it's great, we're on target with the funding plan for this trust fund. The appropriation for FY '24 is 1.54 million, which is in line with the 25% incremental increase as we've done in previous years. The balance for that account is currently 17.9 million as of December of 2022.
Any questions? I have one question.
Sure.
Do we have most recent actuarial update?
I do have, if you'd like to see, I don't have it
No,
with me,
is
but I can
everything-
share that with
Is it
you.
in line with where we thought we were, and we're pretty much to meet our target?
Yep, yes.
Excellent.
You,
Okay.
George, you said it was in the book that you gave us earlier, right?
I don't believe so. It's in the I don't say ACFR report that we do each year. I can provide that. It's a,
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing the write-up, and when I met with you and Chris.
oh, yes, the overall, a breakdown of just the OPEB. Yes, it's in the overall budget book that was
So
produced.
that's all in there, right?
Yes.
That's all I need.
If you want the actual actuarial
No.
evaluation, I can send that as well. It's a fun read.
That would put me to sleep.
Yeah.
Any question over here, George?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there an underfunded liability here, or are we breaking even on this each year, from year to year?
No, it is an unfunded liability that we're working towards.
Shortening. How much do we get killed on the PBGC for this?
I'm sorry?
The pension benefit guarantee, the insurance that we have to pay for every pension? We don't have to pay for it?
No, I don't know the actual answer to that, so
It's,
I would have to
it-
get back to
I
you.
think it's the biggest scam going, but-
We are on target, we are actually above, the goal for the state pension system. for that,
So
for
we're
being
ahead,
fully
we're ahead of the
funded.
curve.
So we are,
Yep.
our target goal is before that.
We
It's
are way ahead of the
invested.
curve, George, because there's no state mandate.
Correct.
We even do this.
Okay.
So we are so far ahead of the curve, we're getting the benefit of the bond rating that saves us millions of dollars in debt service.
I was just,
And I would add to that, I think.
I don't
what-
know
So
any-
these funds are invested through the state and the state retiree
Yeah.
benefit
Correct,
trust
yeah.
fund, yep.
most pensions are flipped or underfunded liability anyway, so it's great that that's awesome. Nice job.
No, I think this town made a very important decision
Yes.
after actually this committee worked, and we had one of our former members who focused on this totally. But we made a remarkable decision starting in FY, I think 17 or 16, to really start maintaining addressing this issue. Very few towns have done this. So I think we're in a very, very unique position, and this is something, it does affect our bond rating in a very positive way.
Yes.
Actually, the town actually started in 2013 with the
Doing
change
the
to
little
health insurance.
25,000, yeah,
There was a
little
significant
incremental,
increase
but-
in that,
but-
and then there was a larger increase
But
in
I think it's
17.
really
So the
important
town
that
has
we
really been
address this.
forward-thinking in this area.
Yes.
Other questions? Okay.
So I'm gonna go through this very quickly. I hope this is helpful and not just too much information. So Articles 12 and 13 are both related to borrowing items, and I just wanted to give a little history on a general debt overview. So the town meeting authorizes borrowing of any funds for a specific project, and then state law governs specifically what we can and cannot borrow for. Just as an example, we can't fund our operating budget or salaries through borrowing. We then issue the bonds. As we were just saying, we have a AAA credit rating in Westwood, which is the best rating you can get. It's great. It allows us to get the lowest possible interest rates. The town treasurer conducts a public bond sale through bids. Select board approves the bond, and then we receive the money and enter into a repayment schedule, which we keep a very detailed list of and update annually. For debt service repayment, the debt service for the bonds, including principal interest, is included in each of the year's budget, as we were just saying, in a centralized budget called debt service. And there is a current repayment schedule that we also update annually. So we're very prudent in our debt financing as part of the town's overall fiscal planning and as part of the financial policies that we keep in place. So long-term debt, it's used to finance capital assets such as infrastructure, buildings, and large pieces of equipment. Whenever possible, new debt payments are issued as prior debt rolls off. So we want to keep the debt budget at approximately the same level. And this is just a little background on, as you can see, obviously, there's a jump in FY24 just because of the previously voted project for the Hanlon Deerfield hitting. But before that, you know, it's sort of this natural decline of debt, and then as things roll off, we borrow for more items, and we just sort of like to keep as level as possible. And specifically for that, the debt level, it's always within our financial policy guidelines that was recently updated. So, and I bring this up because Article 12 and 13 would be what we call non-exempt debt, which is issued within Proposition 2.5. It's different than what was previously voted for the school project, which was voted as its own outside of Prop 2.5 with its own tax revenue funds. Needs to be within the town's ability to pay. So annual non-exempt debt payments should not exceed what we say 8% of net general fund revenue, and the current debt is well within those guidelines. So for FY24, the total debt payments within Prop 2.5 are 3.3, and per the financial policies, as you can see in green, we're well within that. So then, moving on to Article 12, which is the fire ladder truck borrowing item. This article seeks to authorize borrowing for an important piece of equipment for the fire department. It's at $1.85 million. And again, we've just added the article language as well as the motion, because the motion language comes from, as I said, bond counsel. It's vetted through them, and it's what your commission will actually be voting on and voting for the town to authorize to go out to borrow for.
Any questions on 12? Yes.
If I may. So number 12, we are ordering the truck, the fire truck, today for delivery in 2 years. Correct?
You don't have authorization to sign a contract until July 1st.
Yeah.
Right,
If
but
this is
that's
approved
what
at
the
town meeting.
motion is for, right? When will we send out the bond?
When would we go out to borrow?
Correct.
So that, it would be closer to when we're anticipating receiving the item. It would not be July of 2023.
Okay, and then what if we have to put a deposit down on our purchase? Where does that money come from?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If we have to put a deposit down on the purchase?
I'm not even sure if we have to, but if we did, that's sort of why I went through. We sometimes do short-term borrowing, which we're currently doing right now for 3 projects that were approved at last town meeting called a ban. So we can go out for a note and just do a short-term, 1 year, and roll it into the long-term borrowing when we go out for that. We could also try to absorb, if it was a small payment for 1 year, we could try to absorb it into our current debt service budget if things are, like I said, rolling off and we have some sort of capacity in there. So it would all depend on the timing and the rates. And
Okay, but this one vote covers all of that.
Correct, yes, it's just a not to exceed, so it's authorization to borrow up to 1.85 million. So it could be lower than that.
It could be higher, right, given current conditions, and it's 2 years
But we
out.
wouldn't
We
be
don't have
able
the
to
authorization to go
borrow,
higher.
yes, yeah, we would have to figure that out, but if it was, the item came in less expensive, then we would only borrow for the amount that we needed.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I just want to correct something I said at your first public hearing. At your first public hearing, I said that we were moving this up 1 year. I misspoke. We were moving the ambulance up 1 year, not the ladder truck, so I do apologize for that.
No, that's fine, thank you for letting us know. Actually, I'm sort of glad we're not borrowing right now. We're borrowing in 2 years, maybe interest rates will be stabilized by then. Any other questions on Article 12? Okay, Article 13.
So, Article 13 seeks to authorize borrowing for the construction phase of the cemetery expansion. So like I said, the design piece was approved at the previous town meeting, and this is for the construction piece at 1.5. And the debt service for this expansion construction project will be paid for through cemetery lot sales. And again, the article language and then the motion language.
Any questions?
We had talked about, when you were saying it was gonna be paid for by sales of the lots, and there was some discussion about the cost of the lots keeping up with the times. Is that gonna be revisited?
You mean potential for fees to be increased?
Correct.
So I believe, and Todd's here, but I believe at your first public hearing, he said that's one of the, they're going to be looking at the fees.
Todd just, yeah, acknowledged that, okay, thank you.
We're actually doing it right now. As we're going through this whole process of design, we're actually looking at all of these, trying to do steps today. So it works.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so,
For the benefit of people watching, is it a fair statement to say that the rating agencies like to see towns borrow and service their debt rather than just have the no debt at all? In other words, is it a good thing that we're borrowing more within our policies?
It's a good thing that we have strong financial policies, we have a strong financial history, and that just like your personal credit score goes up or down based on how you repay your debt. So
Well,
by having debt, by paying it off, and in some cases paying it off early, does help us.
That's what
And
I'm
we,
getting.
and we do have, as I was saying, AAA, the last time we went out to borrow, which I believe was May of last year, we received a AAA credit rating, so, which is the highest you can receive.
Right, that's what I was alluding to, the personal credit rating. A lot of it has to do with the amount that you owe, and your credit rating goes down if you don't owe anything, oddly enough.
I'm not sure if that's
I'm
way-
not
I think
gonna
the
go
less
into that,
debt you
that's
have, the
outside my
better for your
purview.
credit rating, Chris. It's-
Yeah.
But the debt that we have and the debt that the town has had in the past, and the payment structure that it has, the funding source that it has, and the financial policies all go into our AAA bond rating.
I'll leave it at that.
No.
I just want to make a couple of comments as you get ready to conclude your select board articles. First of all, I see that we have our head of DPW, head of HR, and our two chiefs. I want to thank you. I know you were very actively involved with us in our subcommittee, so thank you for your work. And I want to make a special comment about our new director of finance. You had some very, very large shoes to fill, and I am truly impressed with the way you have just jumped into this job, the knowledge you've gained. And the other thing that truly impressed me about you, Stephanie, you ask questions. You're never shy. When you don't know something, you're not shy about asking. So it's been a pleasure working with you. Welcome to Westwood, and you've done a great job.
I'm thrilled to be here, I really am. It
Yeah.
was a big role to fill.
Yeah.
The previous finance director was fantastic, and she is the reason it's come this far, and I'm just hoping to carry it forward. So
Well,
thank you all for
You've done a
working
wonderful job
for
and a
me.
very nice hire on Mr. Coleman's
Oh,
part, but it's
it
been
was
a
a team
pleasure
approach,
working
so
with
thank
you.
you.
And also congratulations to Molly, two very new additions to the town. We're lucky to have you, so thank you.
Just made the performance evaluation process a
I
little
know.
difficult for me, James. Thanks, appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Yep, so
Okay.
that is the end of my signature.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So with that, we are now getting ready to, I think we are going to, what's the next meeting? That are on the list. Now we start Article 14, which, now we got select board disposition of town-owned properties, 1 and 2.
What's up on 1 or 2 now?
Yeah.
How's the family? All things considered.
Yeah.
So I have town council here. Just, if you have any questions regarding Select Board Article 1, the disposition of property, and we also have the chair of the Charter Review Committee.
Okay.
How propitious.
And we also have Mr. Walsh.
You want to come up here? Welcome. Pleasure to be elected Walsh. As dapper as usual.
Just on time, which is even better.
Your timing is very, very good. And town council is joining, and who else did you say was?
Would have been here sooner, but I
We have
couldn't
members of
find
the
a
Charter Review Committee.
If any one of them wants to come
So
up,
they're
they're more than welcome.
chair.
No, it's fine. It was light. I'm good. We made it wasn't a lot.
Yeah, come on up. Why don't you make the introduction?
Because I'm so new, it always was new for me. So when it was at the scene, it was perfect.
So the disposition of town property, Article, Select Board 1.
Okay, let's start on Select Board Article number 1.
So this is a house that was taken for tax title. We've chosen to dispose of it through Chapter 40. Allows us to do an RFP. The house is currently assessed at just under $617,000. We have a back tax bill of approximately $84,000. I've ordered an assessor to give us a value of the property. I've talked to Jimmy McCarthy. I haven't been in it yet. I plan to be in it in the next few weeks. I'm told it needs work. We're looking to sell it, regain our back taxes, and what other monies we can gather for it.
Are there any questions from members of the commission on this?
Yeah, what happens to the excess beyond the 84,000 tax?
We
bill?
keep it.
I mean, it goes to.
Goes to the
free
general
cash?
fund.
General fund.
Yeah,
And then next year, we can decide how we want to spend it.
probably. Or if we want to spend it.
Okay, thank you. No more questions? Okay, let's go to Select Board Article number 2, Home Rule Petition.
So this is part of the Charter Review Committee's recommendation to the Select Board, well, in which is to convert the appointed treasurer position and the appointed tax collector position, the elected treasurer position, the elected tax collector position to appointed. This was something that we discussed at your first public hearing. We had special counsel here to answer questions, which he did. And this is something that the Select Board has supported, and we're looking to move forward.
Questions?
George, if I may. The last meeting, that this was presented, we heard from the tax collector about how, I won't say limited, but her position doesn't take a lot of time. So has it been considered to either eliminate the position or consolidate the position before we hire 2 people?
So two things. At the last public hearing, this committee was asking me about an FTE. So the process is, we are looking to get approval, we submit the home rule petition to the Commonwealth, and then we await their response. So when they get that response, I will be talking to the board, looking at our current status. Right now, we have a great financial team. And so we can do a number of different things with that great financial team. We could reclassify existing positions all the way up to looking at additional positions. I have not had any conversation with the board as of yet on how we're gonna fill that, change that role, but we're very fortunate to have great financial people in place right now that can certainly assume the responsibilities.
Does he want to ask a question?
Alex, you can speak.
Hi, Vicki, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Mr. Coleman, I just wanted to understand, and maybe you can address this, but I had a hard time hearing. Will there be any increase in cost to the town in terms of staff members required to fill these positions if they are converted from, voluntary positions to staff positions?
Did he say with staff positions for what?
Correct.
he's
I think
asking
you- I
if
think
there's
that-
an increase in salaries if you have to hire somebody. Is there gonna be an increase in costs?
So if we create a new FTE, there would be an increase in cost, and like I said, if we go with our existing team members and we had a reclassification, there may be an increase in cost, but we would also have the reallocation of the currently budgeted elected compensation for those two positions that we would reallocate.
How much do we pay for those two elected?
4,000 apiece.
4,000 apiece, but I would assume, though, that the cost of a appointed position for either treasurer or tax collector is gonna be significantly higher than that.
Well, it depends on how we structure that. So if we hire a an additional FTE, that's one way. If we do the reclassification, then it would be less. Let's put it that way. Because if you're looking at the FTE for one treasurer collector position, if the select board did go with a combined position, you're looking at over 100,000.
I think that was the question.
Yeah,
So-
but like I said, we have very competent people on our financial team right now that if we had this conversation with the board and that was the direction that the board supported and we went with the reclassification, it would be significantly less. So there may be an additional cost outside of that $8,000 that's currently budgeted for those two elected positions, if that answers the question.
That doesn't answer the question, Chris. I'm curious if you could, guesstimate a low end and a high end of what that sort of reclassification or FTE might cost the town.
At this point, I wouldn't have that information on what it would cost the town if we went with the reclassification. Because we would look at the study. I know that our range for one position is competitive with some of the neighboring communities, but that's for our assistant role. So I would certainly see that we might have an increase in the assistant's position if we did a reclassification.
Sorry, Frank.
So-
Can I just jump in here?
Sure.
One of the things that I thought was really helpful when you shared this with George and I is it really de-risks us as a town.
Yes.
Due to the access to the bank account. If we
Yes, so the roles, so what we talked about at the first public hearing was the roles and having the ability to have, so first and foremost, let me just say this. We've had fabulous elected people serving in these capacities, all right? So nothing, only positive things to say about them. Going forward, though, we're looking at the town as saying, looking at our comparables, we are one of very few that still have these elected positions, and the appointed positions certainly put the town in a much stronger position. Case in point, I think this is what you're getting to, is just because you're elected doesn't mean you're bondable. So one of the things that we would have through our process is we would have, when we hire an appointed position, we would make sure that that person, before making a recommendation to the board, would be bondable. And we would have that as part of our interview process. So you could have an elected person now who's not bondable, and then we would have a real problem with that financial position. With the treasurer position can really move funds to any financial institution he or she would want. And that's where we have some of the challenges, and that's even what the state has said some of the challenges are, and which is why many communities have converted to appointed positions.
So I just wanna, cause there's been a lot of questions last time, this time on the cost, so I
Yep.
just think maybe I'll lay it out. So today, we're paying $8,000 for the two positions, nothing else, cause they don't get benefits or anything like that, correct?
We have $4,000 apiece, yes.
They don't get health benefits. Then the two scenarios, if this is approved, is one, you classify up existing FTEs today, so they would get raises in a new classification, but there'd be no new health benefits or other types of costs associated with an FTE. That's option one. And then option two is a new FTE, which would result in not just pay, but additional benefits and costs to the town, because every FTE carries those health benefit costs, right?
Yes, those two scenarios.
Those are the
that's
two kind of
The
scenarios.
reclassification, the first one that you referred to, and then you have a brand new hire for, like you would for any position, that would be a new FTE.
Yep.
So that would come with benefits, being benefit eligible and whatnot.
I just wanted to lay that out.
Well, is it fair to say, Chris, that if you reclassify an existing position, that adds work to that person who's getting reclassified, so you may actually have to backfill behind that person to do the work that they were doing, that they're no longer doing?
Well, there's there's a number of things when you look at reclassification. So if you look into reclassification for just a position, that person would assume more responsibilities, thus the reclassification.
Right.
As far as the work behind or what that other person is doing, what we've been doing here is our assistant treasurer collector has been doing a lot of the work. Our assistant collector, as you heard from the the elected tax collector, has been doing a lot of that work already. So when you're talking about workload, would there be additional responsibilities? Yes, but like I said, we have a strong financial team, and I'm confident in the ability of the individuals to fulfill those responsibilities.
I guess what I'm suggesting is that by reclassifying, even if you have to hire somebody else to do some more, so you do some work, it might be at a very reduced, it might not be a six-figure salary, it might be a lot less than that.
Yes, and we'll, and one of the things, and I'm not trying to be vague to be confusing, but I don't know what's gonna happen once we have the home rule petition. I don't know where we're gonna be with our team, with our existing team members. I don't know if we would have to go outside, but like I said, as of right now, that's where we are.
And you have to wait until the state approves it.
Yes. So my understanding is the state has two options. They can approve it, or they can come back and ask us to do another step.
So what do neighboring towns like Needham, Dover, or Norwood, or Dedham, do they have appointed treasurers?
I can speak for Needham, yes.
And how much do they pay that appointed treasurer?
Needham has a salary range of, so they just had an opening, so they pay up to $118,000.
My concern is the following. I understand the merits of wanting to have an appointed versus an elected treasurer, and we've spoken about or heard, we're very lucky to have highly qualified treasurers. But in my opinion, there is a cost here, and I get a little uncomfortable with an article going in front of town meeting when we as the FinCom really can't answer the question what the cost is gonna be. In my opinion, there clearly is gonna be an increase in cost. If the treasurer is gonna be involved and have the skill set we need. I've been involved in bond funding in my prior public service jobs, and the treasurer function is critical. So the concern I have is not with the underlying merits, but I feel a little uncomfortable going in front of town meeting and having an article, we cannot say that we as the Finance Commission have been able to evaluate and understand the expenses. And it's like, to me, there's gonna be an FY25 expense if we go forward with this, and yet we're not able to determine what that expense is right now, which is very unusual for the Finance Commission.
Well, I can say this, that if this will help put some things at ease, the FY23 maximum for one of our assistants' position is 115. So if you're looking at Needham at 118 and you're looking at ours as 115, the delta's not that far off.
But I think you're gonna have an add-on, aren't you?
Well, see, that's what you guys keep on saying. And what I'm saying is we have a range, so we could do a reclassification of existing staff members, or we can, if we ended up talking to the board about adding an FTE. So if we add the FTE, I hear what you're saying.
But I'd be much more comfortable if you told us what your plan was. Otherwise, let me finish. Otherwise, we're sort of recommending or voting on an article where you have options. We don't know what those options are. I'd feel more comfortable, frankly, if you were in front of us and saying, look, we're gonna need to add an FTE, and it's gonna cost $100,000, so at least we could explain to the town what we're involved in. I get uncomfortable when if that question comes up, we can't answer it. We haven't been able to vet it. That's and I think that's where Alex raised the question. I think we've actually requested some information before this meeting so we can understand it. So I applaud the underlying merits. I think, as Christina said, there's tremendous value in having this. I'm just uncomfortable with not being able to tell town meeting what you folks are recommending for a cost. If you made a decision you were gonna reallocate, fine. Or if you made a decision, I'd be fine if you said you wanted a new position, but I feel uncomfortable with the vagueness of it right now.
So, and I certainly appreciate where you're coming from, George. Haven't had that conversation with the select board because we haven't had that final decision from the Commonwealth yet. Once we get that final decision, actually from town meeting first, and then eventually the Commonwealth, we'll have that conversation with the finance director, we'll have that conversation with the select board, and then we could make a recommendation to the board as well as the process going into
But why does waiting to get approval on this article, which is a home rule petition, I don't understand why. Shouldn't the town be able to decide what it wants, and therefore if the home rule petition comes through, we know what it's gonna cost us, rather than waiting for the home rule petition to come through and then deciding what we're gonna do?
So the worst case scenario I can say is that we're not deciding on an additional FTE. We're not asking the board, we haven't asked the commission for funding for an additional FTE for a new position until, again, we do our due diligence and we do evaluate at that time where we are with our team. So
guess
to
you-
ask for additional funding, to put it into the FY '24 budget, or to put it into a future budget at this time.
I guess my final comment would be, and I will stop on this, and I think I'll defer to Chairman, Board Member Walsh in a second. If you had picked one path or the other, that we were gonna handle this reallocation, fine, or it was gonna cost $110,000, fine. At least we as a board can make it clear to town meeting. I just am uncomfortable with, we have an article in front of us where we're not able to tell the town what the plan is. I'll stop there.
If you may, Mr. Chair. So the way I envision this, and so let me just tell you, and we have not discussed it, Chris is right, it's not come in front of us on this topic yet. So as you may know, I just finished my term with the Massachusetts Municipal Association Select Board President for the last year. Part of the problem with having across the state is finding qualified people for these positions. And so we are one of the last few towns to elect it. In fact, there's been a movement now to get community college to start teaching municipal law to people in their 40s and 50s so that they can now come into state government. Part of the reason this is that we're looking to put qualified people in those positions. And Chris right now has said there's two options. I'm gonna give you a third. It may not cost us anything. We're just looking to put someone qualified in there, and they might have a full-time job and just wanna be the overseer of this for the stipend that we're paying now for $4,000. That is the third option that's out there that hasn't been decided and won't be decided unless the state says, yes, you can appoint that position. Then we'll come back in front of you and say, okay, now it's appointed, we'd like to add it as an FTE, or we'd like to add it as reclassification. But until we get there, we're trying to put the cart before the horse. So we don't really know. So that's the third option that's out there, is we just appoint someone who doesn't want to run for office, clearly qualified, but doesn't like to put their family out in the public, to run for a position of tax collector or the other position, so the town treasurer. So that's just out there as the third option. And I think what Chris is trying to say is, we don't know where we are yet. So we really can't say to the FinCom, this is, what it's gonna cost us financially, but here's what we're looking to do to protect our town. To get someone in that position who's not only qualified, but can be bonded to protect our town for the future. So that's the third option. And when Chris says that we haven't discussed it yet, we haven't. And in fact, I think because I have the third option, it's clear that we haven't really discussed it yet.
George, we do an estimated range anywhere from 4,000 to, I think, 115,000.
I've been, Christina and I discussed this a lot, and we did it offline, and I was listening, pulling some numbers from what Chris was saying and what Michael was saying. So I got about 5 points. The first point is, if I understand the process right now, it is a elected position, 2 elected positions, $4,000 each. So you've got a budget right there of $8,000. If it were to go the other way, complete different direction, upwards over 115,000 is what you said is the max for the position, give or take. I believe you said that.
That's our assistant position.
It's just a position. So that goes to 115. So you're talking about 2 positions at 230. So you're talking about a delta of $222,000. One way we're hiring a salary of 230, and it would get benefits because you can't not give benefits. So it's 230,000 plus benefits in one way. Benefits, I'm going to estimate at 25,000 apiece. So it could be as much as $280,000 if we were to hire 2 people at that 115 rate. 115 times 2, the 230 plus $25,000 worth of benefits for each person. So 50, then you're at 280. So you're at 280 on one side of the spectrum. And then the other, which I like Mike's thinking outside the box there, the second is 2 elected positions, keeping it as is. If I understand it, and George, you can help me with this, right now, it's coming before the FinCom on a warrant on an article that we either are supporting this vote at town meeting, saying it should be appointed, or we're not supporting it. That's our job. But I also have another question. Right now, the town treasurer and the town tax collector, they are elected and they report to the select board, correct?
They don't,
No.
They report to the residents.
they report to the
Okay.
residents.
The
So
residents.
they report to the residents,
Correct.
as you do.
Correct.
if they were appointed, they would report to Chris, who in turn reports to you.
Correct.
All right, so
They would,
it's,
they would
it's, a-
appoint, they would report to the assistant town administrator, finance director, to be clear. Part of the finance
yeah,
department.
that the chain of command
Yes.
stops
But just
at
to be
you.
clear, yes.
So it's also a complete restructuring of the position, which I think is the key part to it. The third part, and this is where Christina and I kind of were enlightened, there's an assistant town treasurer and there is an assistant town tax collector who are doing, as we interpreted it from the meeting we had, a bulk of the work. And so what's gonna happen to those positions? If we now get in one example, if we go to an FTE paying an extra $280,000, well, are these two people, the assistant town treasurer and the assistant town tax collector, are they losing their job? So it's, I'm with you, George, there's a lot of questions here before I wanna put my name on going one way or another. Chris had me sold when we had the meeting and we were talking about it and Christina was there. He had me sold on it as soon as he told me about the liability. But our job isn't to discuss liability. I'm gonna blame Mr. Ahern for that. He can handle the liability. Our job is to discuss the finances. And what it's really coming down to is potentially we have a $280,000 additional cost, or we keep the $8,000 cost.
Excuse me,
Or we do the
Mr. Chair.
allocation.
I'm sorry, I don't know where your 280's coming from. So-
115 for
No,
each
and I
two
understand that,
positions.
but that's not the case.
But that's what you said.
No, I did not say that. I did
You
not
said
say two.
115.
I said our current max for our current assistant is 115.
Correct.
Right, so when we
It's a
talk
max
about
cost.
when we talk about reallocating or reclassifying, you're moving those people. So no one's losing a job, the way you described it. You'd be reclassifying the assistant to treasurer.
So- Okay,
The
so.
delta, so it's not 280, it's a delta from the 115 to something else.
All right, so that is more to answer the question. So, right, I don't know what those two assistant, so we're gonna elevate them, in theory,
That's
one
one option,
example.
yes.
Elevating them, so and they already get benefits, so the 50,000 goes away, because they're already full-time
They're already
employees.
benefit eligible, yes.
So we're only talking about a delta there of whatever they're making, up to a maximum of the 115.
The 115 is the current maximum for the assistant's position. If we went to a treasurer position, took the assistant role away,
Yep.
what I talked about reclassifying, we would reclassify that. So that would be the delta that we keep on talking about from the 115 to something else.
And you don't know what that something else number could be. That's what we don't know about.
We don't know. So we do know that Needham, I was asked about some other communities, and I mentioned that Needham just hired one up to 118. That's the maximum for that position in Needham. The treasurer collector position in
So it's
Needham's
a
118.
$3,000 delta.
Using Needham only, yes.
So, Mr. Chair, to answer Mr. Lamb's question, what this article does is gives us the opportunity to appoint. So we could take the assistant and now make her the tax collector.
That's the
And
piece that I was missing.
there may be nothing, maybe no additional cost. She may be happy to have, or he may be happy to have that title, just to take the position, because we already know they're qualified. What that does is it just takes it out of the election process where someone is just more popular and may know nothing about the position. It's just giving the select board the opportunity to put someone in that position who can take care of that position. And that may be someone just moving up the ranks.
To whom do the assistants report now?
The assistants report day-to-day operations to the assistant town administrator, finance director, but they also they have two, because they have the elected positions as well that they report to.
Thank you both for the explanation. I was missing that part, but it ultimately, Chris, from our point of view, they ultimately report to you on day-to-day operations with the elected person coming in. But the way, I forget the name of the person that spoke at the last meeting, the lady. What is it?
Nancy.
Elaine.
Oh, the
Elaine
collector?
Durania.
Or,
Whoever
Elaine
came and
Durant.
spoke. She says that the staff is fantastic. She
Yes, that
doesn't
was-
really have much oversight. Their day-to-day is, internal. But I think those numbers are a lot more easy to understand. We're talking about a delta of about, at the very most, it sounds like, from what Chris was saying, what it's rated is, we're not talking about more than $15,000.
So, if I may interject, we have several options on the table. We don't know which one is the best yet. George, would you be more comfortable if they assigned an upper bound to what that cost might be? And would you be comfortable at putting an upper bound to say, hey, this would be our most expensive option, should we go down this path, but we have less expensive options to choose from?
Not without talking to the select board first, because I have not discussed this with the select board. What I discussed with the select board is the article that's before you and going through the steps. And what they understand is we have other steps that will come should we be successful with step 1 and step 2.
A little bit of pickle here.
Discussion later. But us, when we vote for this, we are not saying that you have a blank check, go do whatever you want. You have to come back to us.
That's right.
That's correct.
So
I have to go back to the select board, I have to come back to the finance.
Yeah, so I think procedurally, we're just basically saying that we are good with the article as written to allow them to appoint as opposed to elect. That's it.
That's what the article is, yes.
Are there any other
They don't have
questions?
to come back to us.
Yes.
They don't come to us to approve every FTE. So that's the issue I think we're at here, and that's the issue townspeople will have.
Yep.
Is that even if you threw out a number of 100 grand or 200 grand, it would make people feel comfortable. But once we approve this article and the town does, it goes into the budget.
Yeah.
So we can move around positions, but it goes within that whole budget and that approval, so the town doesn't get to approve.
Yeah, I
what's
guess,
spent on it.
I want to respond to Mr. Maroon. I guess that, once again, I have no problem with the merits of this. I think it's sound, and it's, for all the reasons we discussed. I am very uncomfortable that in this article, we don't even have a range. And we've raised this issue literally a month ago. And so it's not that we haven't asked for the information. So I feel that maybe some internal discussion could have taken place to respond to our request to say, look, at least it's a range. And I'd feel a lot more comfortable having a low side and an upside, so at least I feel we've done our due diligence to town meeting. That's my concern. Would anybody else want to say anything?
Do we have to vote on this now, George, or?
No, at the end of the public hearing, we adjourn, and we then go into, people are more than willing to stay, but that is a private, that's a publicly viewed but internal discussion amongst the FinCom. We will discuss and deliberate and vote on each article. Okay?
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Okay, thank you. So now we get to, I think we have the planning board articles. And do we have, we have handouts, because our screen here, just to make it aware to the presenters, is not working. So we can't see, we have to visually go through your summaries here. So Chairman Paff, welcome. Nora, welcome. Wearing your multiple hats. Do you have other members of the committee who are going to come up with you? Okay, I see Kate, welcome. And who else do I not know here from the planning board?
Yeah.
Is Phil here?
Yes, yes.
Phil, welcome.
And
Welcome.
Ellen Rollins.
Ellen?
Come here, come up
Yep.
here.
Ellen, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
See you all, welcome. Thank you so very much. Have you hired your town planner yet?
We have.
Congratulations.
Starts on April 10th.
Congratulations. Okay. All right. Mr. Pfaff, how do you want to start this? You want-
Sorry, what?
The third.
I don't want the clicker. So we have a quorum, and so I would like to open tonight's March 28th Planning Board hearing in joint with the FinCom. So our not hearing, our meeting is open.
Okay, well, welcome.
Good, thank you.
Okay, are you going to start with the,
I will. So we were here about a month ago, and we discussed 5 planning board articles, and we took questions. Only one of those articles has changed at all since we met with you last. So I'll briefly go through them, and I'll just stop on that to explain the change. So the first article is about earth material movement. And if you remember, the main parts of this article are to remove it from the principal use chart, to make sure it's in the accessory use chart, so everyone understands that earth material is an accessory use, and then to make changes to make this an administrative approval, So wherever the current article refers to the planning board, we now refer the town planner, and wherever it refers to an earth material movement environmental impact design review approval, it now becomes an administrative environmental impact design review approval. So fairly straightforward, nothing in that article has changed since we last met with you.
And
So
we'll
I
have-
think, since your articles are not sometimes the easiest to understand, let me open it up to questions after each
Sure,
one,
each
rather
one.
than, so,
Okay.
are there any questions on Planning Board Article number 1?
And we're also flatly prohibiting gravel pits.
We are, so there, in the current bylaw, there's a path to which you could get to a gravel pit. It'd be very unlikely, you'd have to go to the planning board and get a site plan review approval for a gravel pit, or for earth material movement as a principal use. There's nowhere in town that there's one contemplated, there's none that are existing, so we've removed that option.
Any other questions on 1? Why don't you go to 2?
2 is an article on sustainability, and this article does have one change to it that's responsive to comments that we took at your last meeting. The first portion of this article deals with motor vehicle charging stations, and there were comments made that there was some concern about a private property owner who would offer motor vehicle charging stations for a fee, and whether they could gouge customers and therefore make those charging stations less useful than they could be. So the planning board has added language to this article, which you have before you, that essentially puts a cap on fees to consumers. And it's capped at 125% of the annualized actual cost to the person who owns the EV chargers, so they can pass on to a customer.
Questions on this?
What's the average cost to install a charging station?
So there was a memo I sent out that the town has installed 8 of them. 4 of them so far, and there's 8 more to come. And the town's costs were roughly $5,000 to $8,000 for each one. For the unit itself, the electrical connections were funded by grants from Eversource. So we didn't actually have those costs, and I don't believe the town's anticipating having those costs for the 8 that they're working on now.
How did you come up with the 125%, or the 25% increase?
At a planning board meeting discussing what would be appropriate, we thought that there needs to be some profit to the person who's providing these to make it worthwhile and to cover the cost of maintenance. So that was a figure that we settled on that was not exorbitant.
Do any other towns have this requirement?
Not that I have seen, but there are a few towns, they're only just beginning to require EV chargers, so I don't think they've thought it through all the way yet, so.
So I take it that from the wording of the end of the sentence, the quantity of the electricity that is dispensed to the user, is it your intention then to require EV operators to charge by the kilowatt hour instead of the time plugged in?
They will have to, in order to meet this bylaw, they would have to do that, which is the more efficient way and the more fair way to do it. There are some, there's none in Westwood, but there are in other towns, EV charger operators who charge by the minute as opposed to charging by the kilowatt. And charging by the kilowatt is the preferred method, because different types of cars charge at different rates. And so that way everyone's actually paying for the cost of energy that they're receiving.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is the town doing this on a voluntary basis, or is it driven by a state or federal mandate?
So the town is doing it on a voluntary basis now, but I very much expect it to be soon driven by a mandate. The town is making it a mandate to commercial property owners and to itself. We're putting this restriction that if you create a new parking lot of more than 25 spaces, you will have to do this going forward. We think that we're very close to having that requirement. And more importantly, there's a need right now. So the number of EVs are increasing to the point where there's not a sufficient way to charge them outside of your home.
Do the charging stations on town-owned property charge a fee to people, or are they free to?
They're free currently, and the town may reevaluate that as they have additional charges, but for right now, they are free. And the memo that I forwarded to you from Tom Philbin stated that they have not seen they haven't noticed it in their electric bills yet. It's not a significant cost.
Okay. Article
Right?
3?
The next, this is still Article 2, has
I'm
several,
sorry,
several
excuse me.
portions to
Yep.
it. So that was the first portion. The second portion amends the environmental impact design review standards, which used to just refer to energy efficiency, and now we've split that into 4 categories: energy conscious design, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and water efficiency. And we've borrowed language from the University Avenue section of our bylaw and increased the sustainability requirements under just EIDR approval outside of University Avenue. Then the third part of that, we've amended the submittal requirements to make sure that all trees over 5 inches are shown on plans when they're first submitted, the existing conditions plan. We've amended the submission requirements to eliminate the need for a model unless the planning board determines it's necessary, kind of turning that upside down. Right now, all applications require a physical model, which the planning board has the ability to waive, and they have waived, there's been one project in the 15 years I've been here that has had a model required. All the others have been waived. So this is turning that around and saying that now, if the planning board thinks you need a model, they'll ask you to produce one. It also amends the EIDR standards by changing the preservation of landscape section to a sustainable landscape section, which requires preserving the existing natural features, minimizing soil removal, maintaining trees greater than 5 inches in diameter, in caliper, relocating or replacing trees where necessary with native species trees, and removing noxious vegetation.
Is it diameter or caliper?
Caliper.
Which means?
It essentially means diameter, but it's measured with a device that just kind of grasps at the tree like a wrench and measures the distance across the tree.
How
Not the
high off the
circumference,
ground?
4 feet off the ground.
Yes,
Question. Last time you said that this 7.3, section 7.3 applies only to commercial property. Is that still correct?
Let me go back, 7. This applies to commercial and institutional and multifamily residential.
Well, okay, but not single-family
Not single
residential.
family, not single or two family.
Okay, but on the renewable energy section, 7.3.8, 11.3, you refer to new non-residential structures.
Yes, so that's on a new provision where we require, in this article, there would be a requirement for new commercial structures or new non-residential, which include institutional. New institutional and commercial structures over 5,000 square feet would have to make up 50% of their electrical demand with either solar or wind power. It's for new structures only, and it excludes residential structures.
But if this section doesn't apply to residential, why do you specify?
Non-residential, because this applies to multifamily residential.
Okay.
So if it was more than two family. So we have categories of residents. We have single and two family residences, and we have multifamily residences. This does not apply to multifamily residences. The planning board discussed that quite a bit, and they were concerned to take baby steps, I'd say, where we're only tackling new non-residential. So I would say a mixed-use residential would fall into that category, but a standalone, if, for instance, someone wanted to replace an existing 3 or 4 family structure in town, they would not have to abide by this, even if they were over 5,000 square feet.
And then on your energy conscious design section, it says reasonable efforts shall be applied to prevent adverse effects on the energy consumption of neighboring structures. How is that going to be measured or applied?
So I think that is, I think you'll know it when you see it, when the planning board gets a article, application before them, if they find that the proposed design has a negative effect on a neighboring structure, they would take that into consideration in reviewing it.
You're blocking the sun from my solar arrays,
Yeah.
so you can't build.
Which they already actually cannot do that by state law. You cannot block your neighbor's solar facilities. But we also have setbacks for solar facilities, so it's very unlikely to happen. Judging by our height requirements and the setback requirements, your building will not block another's.
All right, just one last one. In the 7.3.811, the first paragraph, it talks about all proposals shall include an analysis of greenhouse gas impacts. All your additional conscious design, energy efficiency, renewable energies all say use more renewable energy and efficient processes. Wouldn't that in of itself produce less greenhouse gases? So would this analysis be necessary, and how much are you expecting this analysis to cost the developer or the property owner?
I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what it would cost to do the analysis. I think it's a fairly straightforward calculation that is done by businesses in putting together their proposals, and we see it on current applications. Current applications already do give us that information, but it's voluntary. I don't know how much it costs them to produce that aspect of their application.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, Christina.
7.3.7, does that apply to showing all trees over fences on plans? That applies to residential, like,
Only something that's before the board for environmental impact design review, which would be commercial, institutional, and multifamily residential. It wouldn't apply to a single family or two-family home.
okay. And then the renewable energy, the new non-residential structures, so, for example, if we're talking about the development of Humboldt Bus, we would require them to have photovoltaic or wind turbines?
They could require it on the mixed-use building, so the current plan, we don't have an application yet. The applicant did come to talk to the planning board twice in the summer and fall, and in both those cases, they had one building that they were proposing up against Everett Street that would be a mixed-use building. That one, they could require solar or wind turbines on the roof of that.
Okay. How come we're not requiring that for
For-
large residential structures?
What,
Apartment complexes.
does someone else want to take that? That's decision that was made by the planning board.
The apartment complex, is that what you're?
Yeah.
Really, I don't wanna say we're dipping our toe in the waters here, but this is our first venture into mandating that this be considered, and we really wanted to have a sense of the appetite of the town. And while some people are really anxious to get to go the full 9 yards, we're cautious about some people in town not wanting that, and what we're focusing on is making sure we get our foot in the door for renewable energy. And we figured this would probably be our best approach, is to approach just the commercial aspect of the new builds and not involve residential backlash, really. We don't wanna upset people, but we wanna get people used to this idea. We thought this was the best way to do it.
There's also the case of, in that one particular instance you're talking about, that's under a by right multifamily residential zoning bylaw. If an applicant wants to develop under that bylaw with just a by right approval, we can't require it. But if they want to develop more units under a special permit, the planning board always has the authority to consider discretional approval.
Okay, good.
All right, moving on to Article 3. This is the article for zoning bylaw changes related to dumpsters. And there are no changes to this article since we spoke to you a month ago. This would amend the use requiring screening section, 6.3.5, to make it clear that dumpster screening requirements apply to all non-residential and multifamily residential properties. And then it would amend section 6.3.6, the actual screening standards, by deleting the existing one and replacing with a new one clarifying what the standards are. mainly that you have to enclose all dumpsters, you must put them on a impermeable base, and you must have impermeable covers as well.
Questions? Okay.
Article
Oh, I'm
4.
sorry.
I must have misunderstood. Last time, I thought you were saying that there's some part of this that's going to be imposed on existing dumpsters, and some part is only on new dumpsters.
So, two different articles. So there's the zoning article is on properties, whether the dumpster's existing or new, properties that are coming for environmental impact design review
Okay,
approval. So
right.
they're doing something to their property that brings them before the
That brings
planning
it
board.
forward. Okay,
There's
right.
another article that'll come later, a general bylaw, that applies to everything across
Okay.
the board.
All right.
All right?
Okay.
Article 4 is housekeeping amendments. There were 10 separate amendments that are proposed here. They're all, they're the same as they were a month ago, so I don't think you want to go through them individually. But all the changes are changes either to correct misspellings, misnumberings, or to put items in alphabetical order or proper number sequencing.
And I know one of our subcommittees met with you, so, okay.
Yes.
Are there any questions on any of these? Okay, let's go on to the final article.
Final article is also on dumpsters, so this is the general bylaw changes. And what this would do is it builds upon the zoning bylaw dumpster requirements by putting them into the general bylaw. And the general bylaw goes a little bit further than the zoning bylaw. It doesn't just tell you you need to screen your dumpster and how you need to screen your dumpster, but it also sets hours of operation, hours during which you can empty your dumpsters, hours during which you can fill the dumpsters, and it imposes maintenance requirements as well. This would apply to anyone who currently has a dumpster in town.
Questions? Okay, thank you so very much. I just also want to compliment you, Nora. I think the process this year with the planning board was extremely smooth, and compliments to the planning board on all the work that you do. And I think, Chris, having you come in and Nora come in at the beginning to explain, number one, all of the roles and responsibilities that Nora has, and also for you to explain the function and responsibilities of the planning board, I think that enlightened the board members. So it's something I want to sort of do, I would recommend we do each year as we kick off the season. But thank everybody in the planning board. Nice job, folks.
Thank you very much.
And if you don't mind, we do need to make a motion.
Oh, yeah, you guys got it.
I move that the planning board recommend finance and warrant commission support the 5 planning board warrant articles as revised, as presented in this meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Kate?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Nice
And
vote.
then we'll need a motion to continue.
And then I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for consideration of proposed zoning bylaw amendment and general bylaw. I have to read the whole thing, right, still?
You do.
It's long. And general bylaw amendment warrant articles to Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 at 7 PM in the Champaign Meeting Room located at 50 Carver Street, Westwood, Mass. Unless the governor or state legislature extend the suspension of certain provisions of the open meeting law and U.S. Chapter 30A, Section 18, allowing for remote meeting participation beyond the current expiration date of March 30th, 2023, in which case this public hearing will instead be held remotely via Zoom, and the town website will be updated to include an updated meeting agenda, and Zoom information will be provided on the town's calendar on the homepage at https://www.townhall.westwood.ma.us/.
Well done, Kate.
We have a motion and a second. I assume there's no more discussion? Kate?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
I'm
very
sorry,
much.
one more, motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Kate?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
So,
Summer Verbenas
Keep them
goes
straight,
away.
Nora.
yeah, so as Pat Ahern, we have had Pat Ahern send out to you his overview of what voting is like, what our voting responsibilities are here in a town meeting. But as he is coming up, I just want to sort of, at this point, find out if there's any public or press comment or questions as we're getting close to the end of the public hearing part of our meeting. So do we have, where did I lose? Oh, do we have any public, are there any questions?
No, not from Alex.
No?
No, no.
You all have copies of?
Any questions? Any public request questions?
Anybody in the audience would like to talk?
Yeah. No, okay, all right. So we had Pat, everybody hopefully had a chance to read it. Pat, maybe take 5 minutes, and I guess we can do it two ways. You can give us an overview, I can have folks ask questions. What would you prefer?
What do they prefer? I'm here to serve you.
All right, Pat sent out, has anybody had a chance to look at it? Do you have any questions? I
I
think
just wanna make sure I know which document you're talking about.
Pat, it was a memo we sent out to you, from, Victoria sent it out. It was on the voting procedures.
There's a couple.
10:48 this morning, is that the one you're talking about? Yes.
Probably?
Probably.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
What do you prefer? Do you want me to go through it quick? This is
Yeah,
the-
go through it very, very
This
quickly,
is the
Pat, okay?
Cliff Notes version, not the
Yes.
advanced version?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay, so the Finance and Warrant Commission, via the charter, shall consider all articles in the warrants for all town meetings and shall report in writing before each town meeting in a manner provided by the town bylaws in advance, estimates and recommendations for consideration at town meeting. It requires the commission to hold public meetings not less than 14 days prior to any town meeting. Failure to timely post, publish, or mail such advance advice, estimates, and recommendations in a manner by the town bylaw shall not affect the validity of town meeting. So you have a very large responsibility. I think all of you know that. So when considering warrant articles, you basically have two choices. You can move to approve the article, or you can move to recommend indefinite postponement. What does that mean practically? If you vote in favor of a warrant article, the town meeting can consider that article on its merits. If you vote for indefinite postponement, the town meeting must first vote by a majority to defeat indefinite postponement to consider the merits of the warrant article. Other responsibilities of the FinCom, you are responsible to do the write-up for each warrant article. You can have a majority opinion, and you can have a minority opinion. Bylaw section 3010 state the Finance and Warrant Commission shall be, those write-ups shall be distributed no later than 7 days before the business session of town meeting. Said annual report will be published on the town's website. Copies made available by the town clerk's office, and one is mailed at the current time to each house. Let's talk a little bit about town meeting procedures. The business session of the annual town meeting shall be held on the first Monday. This year it's May 1st, after the annual election, which is the Tuesday before. A moderator who shall be a registered voter of the town shall be elected for a one-year term and shall preside over all sessions of town meeting. If the moderator is, I just found out this week, when I did this research, is unavailable, the select board shall appoint a moderator. The moderator cannot be someone from another elected body. Town meeting has a quorum requirement via the charter, section 2.2-8-1. The bylaws state that the quorum should be 175. Historically, 2 of the past 3 years, 3 years ago, I had to go into court, and we got a order from a judge to reduce our quorum. This was COVID year 1, if you all recall. First year we held the town meeting out on the football field. And then last year, the legislature enabled the select board to just vote to reduce the quorum. I want to emphasize that that is not a ceiling, it is a floor. Anyone can still attend town meeting. And motions at town meeting, generally, the most common motions are a motion to reconsider. An article may only be reconsidered on the same night that it is brought forward. So if town meeting for some reason lasts more than one night, an article that passes or fails on the first night can't be reconsidered on the second night. Motion to dissolve. No motion to the effect which would resolve the meeting shall be in order until the subject matter of every article on the warrant has been considered and disposed of. And finally, any motion shall be reduced. Most moderators I've seen in my tenure here, and it's longer than 10 years, that's for sure, has to be in writing. Almost every moderator that I've had the privilege to work with has held that requirement. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to have any further discussion with you about procedure, town meeting, or anything you'd like offline if you'd wish.
Yeah, thank you so very much for putting this together. It's actually a nice little Bible, I mean, for future FinCom members. One question, on the motion for reconsideration.
Yes.
Does that take a 2/3 vote, or is that a majority, simple majority? Further, you can answer that some further time, okay?
Yeah, I think it may,
Does
I
it
think it's a
depend on the
majority.
actual
Okay.
yeah.
warrant?
But no, it doesn't. I don't think it does. But, so a motion to reconsider, I think, requires a majority, but I'd have to look at my handbook on that one, because you only do this once a year. And I'll admit, I sometimes tend to lose those, but I won't on May 1st, I can guarantee, and I've got two people up there helping me. So you recall that disposal of land, articles that require borrowing, and zoning articles require 2/3 vote. Virtually everything else is a simple majority.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
I wish you luck in your deliberations.
Got a question?
Had a quick question, me being more new to this.
Yep,
In the off chance that the FinCom votes for indefinite postponement,
Yep.
motions and votes for indefinite postponement, does that go in our write-up
yes.
of the booklet? Okay, so the article's still shown in our booklet.
Yeah,
and
and we have to explain, well, we explain our vote, whatever it is, okay?
thank you.
One other thing about your write-up. I've seen where there's been a majority and a minority, and there's no minority opinion, and members of town meeting ask for that. Why did you vote that way? They're interested in knowing what the subject, why you feel that way you did about that particular article. So I would just personally encourage you, even if you're a party of one voting against something, to consider doing a minority report to explain.
But you do not, at town meeting, you do not have to get up
You
if
do
you don't want
not.
to.
You are not
okay?
required to speak.
No. All right, thank
Good
you
luck,
so very
folks.
much. So this ends the public hearing part of our meeting. So what I'm going to suggest is a 3-minute break. You know, if anybody needs to get up, use the restroom, and then we will come back, start our deliberations, and vote. Okay, that makes sense? Okay.
George, it takes me 3 minutes to get up anyway.
Just going to go use the restroom. You all set? Okay, now wait a minute. We have timeout. Alex, are you still on the phone?
I am, yes.
All right, so we have to do a roll call because Alex is on the phone, okay? So do it, and then we'll adjourn. Can you do that, please?
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes. I'm sorry, George, can we just, open the floor to Chris? I think he's got something to say real quick before we,
Oh,
Could I, before you end your public session,
before we end the public session.
the public hearing?
We're halfway through the vote.
If you don't want me to, I won't.
All right, then we're going to have to re-vote. All right, what's the issue?
The issue is, the question that I believe, came from George regarding up to a certain dollar amount.
Yep.
For article. So I can't commit the board, because I haven't had the conversation with the board, but what I can say, and I'm recorded, that my recommendation would not exceed $130,000.
So that quantifies it.
I would hope so.
If you were to add an FTE.
If we were to add, well, it would not, the additional costs, as everyone said, they feel that's gonna be additional costs, would not exceed $130,000.
Okay. Thank you.
That would cover us on the worst case scenario.
All right.
Okay?
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thanks.
So I hate to do this, but just start again, just to make sure we do this
Motion-
right.
Motion to adjourn for 5 minutes.
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
George Laham,
Yes.
George Morone,
Yes.
Christina, sorry,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and Alex.
Yes.
Okay, so you get 5 minutes.
Not 3, 5.
Quick. I know who was signed up for all the planning board articles. That was a very,
That was Caitlin.
Caitlin gets a kudo for
It's a
knocking those
star,
off.
gold star for that.
Okay, so, do you have the list? I know I volunteered for Article 1, which is the zero appropriation. I'm gonna struggle with that one. Okay. Who has Article 2?
Do we need to vote to reconvene?
Do we have to vote to reconvene, Pat?
You should.
Can I get a motion to?
Motion to reconvene.
Second.
Okay, will you do the roll call? Glad you're here.
No, just ask him.
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Sorry, Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Laham?
Yes.
George Morone?
Yep.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Good. Okay, let's go through the, who has I've got Article 1, who has Article 2?
No one's on there.
Who wants to do Article 2? Everybody's got their.
Mike is.
Mike will do Article 2, thank you. Article 3, which is the big one, it's the town budget. Who wants to volunteer for that? Going once.
They have these from last year. These are reoccurring ones. Do we?
Yeah, Victoria got the book from last year in Word format, so
Okay.
you can just extract it from that.
Right, so do we?
Well, somebody needs to take ownership.
Yeah, somebody take
and
ownership.
Do the
Yes.
copy paste and change a few words.
Yeah, I need somebody to volunteer for Article 3, the budget.
Will you assign somebody?
George
Yeah, I
Laham.
think Mr. Lehan just signed up. Okay, Article.
Work, is it?
No, it's not. And I actually think George is right, I mean, Chris is right. You can look at last year, these are basically pro forma, unless there's something controversial happens in the vote for that, which I don't think there will. Article 5 is which one? That is,
Cool, I took that one.
Bill's got that?
Yeah.
Okay, Article 6.
Oh, wait, who's doing Article
Bill,
4?
4 is,
Municipal.
oh, did I skip one?
Yeah, you did.
All right, 4 is municipal capital improvements.
I'll do that one.
Okay, 5 is the school capital improvements. Bill, do you want to do that too?
I took that one.
Thank you. Budget 6 is the sewer capital improvements,
I'll do it.
okay? Sewer capital borrowing,
There should be one for everybody. So.
I got it.
you got that? Okay, and then the additional capital improvements, 8 and 9 additional capital improvements.
I don't think so. I think you were 10, 11, or 8.
Jim, can I get you or,
I was signed up for 12 and 13.
okay, all right. Lauren, are you assigned anything?
I think, am I 10?
I have 10.
You have 10?
You have 10? All right, or 8 and 9, anybody?
I'll do one.
You want to do it, 8 and 9?
Sure.
Okay, Sean's got those, thank you. And stabilization fund, Lauren, did you have that? That's what I heard.
Stabilization fund?
That was me.
No, that
Oh,
was
who?
George.
Okay, George Maroon. 11,
OPEB I have.
okay. Fire ladder truck,
That's me.
Jim
Jim,
has 12
okay.
and 13.
12 and 13.
13, okay. Now, the miscellaneous, oh, that's gone. The disposition of town-owned property.
Alex has that.
Alex, you got that?
No, it's because he has 12 and 13.
Yep, I've got it.
Okay, and then the home rule petition. Sean signed up for that, right?
No, there's,
I volunteered for that at the start of the night to you, but my name wasn't on the spreadsheet yet.
Okay, so you're gonna do that?
Unless somebody else has a burning passion.
I don't think anybody has, so you got it.
I think we all stepped back one step.
Okay, so now, the only comment I will make is anybody's question is as important as anybody else's. I want you to feel fully comfortable that when you vote an article, you feel that it's been fully discussed and deliberated. And I think the rule of thumb, if there is a, the rule I want to use, if there's one or two minor concerns, I would ask the person writing up the article to express that. If we have significant concerns, we'll actually do a minority opinion, and I will ask one of the members who, of that group to draft it, write it, and then send it to the person writing the article.
Can we,
Yeah.
can we, I think based on some issues we had in the past couple of years, we should qualify what defines a minority opinion. If two people disagree, I don't think that should be a minority opinion.
I think I agree with you. I think I want to leave it to the chair's discretion. I think anything over 3, I'm going to want a minority opinion, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I think 1 or 2, look, I mean, 1 or 2 is if it's an issue, and I feel that the person writing the article can reflect that, I think that's fine, okay? All right?
One point of clarification is that in the past, we've had abstentions.
Oh, okay,
And abstentions, in my mind, should not count as a no vote.
okay.
That's created confusion when people have abstained.
Yeah, and look, if the other thing is, the public should understand the basis of each one of our votes. So if you have strong feelings about something, that's fine. If you want to vote, say it's, 13 in favor and 1 or 2 against, at least let us know the thinking so we can reflect that in the write-up, okay? I think we owe that to the public.
My understanding is that the town bylaw directs that we only report yays and nays,
Okay,
not abstentions.
okay. All
So
right,
as long as we have at least 7 yays, we have a quorum voting in favor.
Okay. All right, let's start the process. So let's go to, where's my little list here? Article 1, which I think is fairly easy, which is a 0 appropriation. Is there any discussion or questions on that? And I think the one question that came up is, why are we voting it if it's 0? And I think the appropriate answer was, in case something comes up at the very end, we need to be ready to have that article in place. Okay? But any discussion, comments, concerns? Second?
Second.
Okay, we got to do the roll call. Would you do it, please?
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angelo?
Yes.
George Wilhelm?
Yes.
George Morone?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
That's your, okay. So that is a unanimous vote in favor of.
George,
Yes.
is it possible, I don't know if you have to ask Mr. Ahern, is it possible that we could all do a raise your hand?
No, I've checked with Mr. Ahern. I think because we have somebody on remote, we actually have to go through the roll call.
Even if we say it, that we.
Yeah, I think, let's just protect ourselves and do it conservatively, okay?
27 roll
All
call.
right, what are we up to? Article 2. Yep,
All the way up to 2.
all the way up to 2. Okay, any discussion on Article 2? Can I get a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
Okay, would you kindly take the roll call?
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angelo?
Yes.
George Wilhelm?
Yes.
George Morone?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, we are now up to Article 3, which is this is the operating budget for the town. And we've had the school superintendent give us an update. I think our committees have been actively involved, but I want to make sure we answer any questions or concerns about this article. Okay, and let's do, can I get a motion?
Second?
All those in favor? Do the roll call?
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angelo?
Yes.
George Wilhelm?
Yes.
George Morone?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board number 4, Municipal Capital Improvements. Any questions or concerns? Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve Article 4.
Second.
Okay, would you do a roll call, please?
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angelo?
Yes.
George Wilhelm?
Yes.
George Morone?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Let's do Select Board Article number 5, School Capital Improvements. Are there any questions? Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve Article 5.
Second.
Second. Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
So we're up to 6, right? Yep. Okay, Select Board 6, Sewer Capital Improvements. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve Article 6.
Second?
Second.
Would you do the roll
Bill?
call, please?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. All these have been unanimous. Select Board Article 8, Additional Capital Improvements.
7.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, 7. Was that sewer capital improvements? Oh, that's right, there are 2 of them. Sewer capital borrowing, excuse me. Can we get a motion on that?
So moved. Second.
Okay?
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board Budget 8, Additional Capital Improvements. Can we get a motion?
Motion to approve Article Budget 8.
Second?
Second.
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board 10, Stabilization Fund.
9.
No, no.
9, jeepers, additional
9.
capital improvements. Thank you. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board 10, Stabilization Fund. Can we get a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board number 11, OPEB Liability Trust Fund, FY '24.
So moved.
To
Second.
approve?
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board number 12, Fire Ladder Truck Borrowing.
A motion that we accept this warrant article.
Second.
Bill?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Leham?
Yes.
George Moreau?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board Budget 13, Cemetery Expansion Construction Borrowing.
Something I didn't hear until this evening was that, and I forgot about it, that last town meeting, we appropriated money for design for this. So I guess it was kind of a follow-on to the design, but, is everyone comfortable that this is necessary? That we need to expand the cemetery?
It's my understanding that we're gonna be able to recover the costs,
Right,
selling the plot, so it's kinda like a break even.
okay. All right.
It isn't necessarily a guaranteed break even. They're gonna look at expanding or increasing the fees, but, there may be some sort of a deficit. But I do think that this is, after hearing Todd, I think this is definitely a necessary improvement.
All right.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Motion to approve. Article 13.
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes?
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Lahem?
Yes.
George Maroon?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, now we're gonna go to two more select board articles. Before we do, any of you who are baseball fans, Victoria has this so well organized. She's got a spreadsheet, it looks like a scoring sheet from a baseball game, so I'm very impressed. Okay.
No runs, no hits, no
Yeah,
errors.
that's right. All right, Select Board 1, disposition of town-owned property, 47 Willard Circle, Select Board article. Can we get a motion?
Motion to approve, Select Board Article 1.
Second?
Bill?
Okay.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes?
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Lahem?
Yes.
George Maroon?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Select Board 2, Home Rule Petition, an act creating the appointed positions of town treasurer and tax collector, Select Board article. Any discussion?
I have a question about it.
Yes.
Is it gonna be voted on as edited by his comment at the end, or?
I think we can incorporate that into our write-up.
Okay.
I think the wording is the wording as is. So whomever is writing that article up, which is Sean, will indicate that, however we want to word it, based on further discussion with town officials, the upside cost is the $130,000 number we were given.
Perfect.
Any further discussion?
Can I chime in, George, by phone?
Of course you may.
Yeah.
Alex?
Off on the FinCom. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify for us in the FinCom, are we voting on the merits of this move of taking this from being an appointed position to, elected position to a sort of staff position, or are we voting on the financial implications of it? Because I know you sort of were straddling the two with your conversations in the room.
Alex, I think what we're doing, if I can summarize this correctly, we are voting on the merits or the article as written, which authorizes the town to submit a home rule petition to the legislature for the town to go from elected to appointed treasurer and tax collector. On the issue of the cost, that's what we are voting on. In our write-up, explaining the basis of our vote, we will indicate that the range we have, the upside range we have been given in terms of cost is $130,000, but that only appears in our write-up. So I think you're correct. We're only voting on the merits, which authorizes the town to submit this home rule petition.
Okay, thank you, George.
Okay.
I can motion to vote if others are ready.
Oh, is anybody?
I would like to make a statement, actually.
Yes, Christina?
So, I know George and I had worked on this pretty extensively, and I know it's tough to quantify the averted risk, but I really do believe it's greater than the deltas discussed at 130. I think it really de-risks us as a town,
Yep.
and I strongly, strongly support this.
Excellent, okay.
And just to piggyback, I'm gonna give the example. It's my understanding that, so the town treasurer could come in one day and say, I want to invest in crypto. And he or she, they have that right to take the money without further authorization and put it in SVB Bank if they wanted to. They could put it in First Republic, they have that right. And they don't have to, there's no check and balance. That's, initially, I believe in democracy and I believe in elections, so I believe in electing people, but when I was told this, $130,000 is, no offense, Mr. Aaron, not even a drop in the bucket on a legal fee if we got into it with the liability here. The lawyers would just drain it.
Right.
So I very much echo what Christina said, and that the liability here is a problem. And that's why this
Well,
removes that.
I think the issue is, it's making sure we have, first of all, the elected treasurer can do that today too.
That's what I'm saying, that's the
And so
problem.
I think though, that I think that the getting a qualified person who can be bonded, who meets the criteria that I think the town, I'm sure the town manager and if the position is reporting to Director of Finance and Assistant Town Manager, I'm sure they will make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've got a quick
Yes.
question for Pat. So procedurally, if we have the $130,000 cap that we'll put in our write-up, that is not changing the written warrant article. And therefore, would that need to be submitted in writing to change the warrant article to include the cap? Or it's just a number that's out there that gives guidance?
So the warrant article is designed to get us to the legislature.
Got it.
The $130,000 budget item was given to you based on your questions about what the possible ramifications are.
Got it.
And I would also add to that, Mike, that obviously in FY '25, that will be on our minds, and we will ask to find out if that position is in the budget, what's the solution the town is recommending?
I'm sure a few of us are gonna remember that.
Yes,
one
so
very-
that'll be an appropriate follow-up question. But I think we're basically voting on the merits of the article as it's written.
George Hertz, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing up something that I think was on many of ours minds as we were discussing this article. I think you articulated it much better than I could have, certainly, but appreciated you bringing it up. And certainly, I think this is worthwhile including in our write-up, in our discussion, that this was a point of concern for us. And I know as a FinCom member next year, I'll be looking at the budget and
Good.
seeing what has been proposed. And I would like the town to try to go for a cost-effective option while certainly doing what we need to avoid any risk.
Excellent comment, Sean, thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just would have liked to have heard more discussion on how this is going to look if the petition passes. I mean, we've got a lot of discussion on whether we're gonna have a FTE and how much it's going to be. But, you know, there was also the issue of, can you consolidate positions or just eliminate them in a whole, and it's not even an option.
I think you've raised an important point, and that clearly will be one of our questions we will be asking next year. And it'll, whoever is on that, however we set our committee structure up, that's one of the follow-ups. It'll actually be part of the budget discussion, so we'll follow up on that. It's a good follow-up item.
Make a motion to accept, select board
To approve?
to approve.
Second?
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Lauren?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angelo?
Yes.
George Lahem?
Yes.
George Maroon?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
So the only request I have is that, Jim, I think your concern was not enough discussion on how it was gonna be implemented, is that correct?
Right, what the final result of this vote is going to look like.
Okay, all right. And Lauren, what were your
Well,
concerns?
I mean, too, when they were, when everyone was talking and everything, they said themselves, they didn't talk to each other, about this. Then they just kind of laid out, option one, option two, and then option three kind of appeared. So it's just like how, we're representing the citizens of the town. And you made up the very good point of like, you can't, how are we gonna say a decision like, yeah, sure, go for it, where
Right.
all the details and the facts have not really been 100% laid out. Be like, yes, we actually did discuss it and we decided because of this and this, option one's the best opinion, so please, let's go forward with that one.
I actually basically agree with you, but I truly felt that listening to the underlying merits, the importance, I think, as Christina has pointed out, of getting away from elected to appointed positions. But I think we had to look, we spent more time talking about this and
Right.
trying to flush
Right.
the issues out. I'm very impressed with the way the FinCom members have handled this, and I think the message is, when you bring things to FinCom, we need the data to support it, because we have a responsibility to town meeting. And at least now, if there are any questions come up at town meeting, I would feel comfortable saying, that we, what the basis of our recommendation was and why we want to see an upper limit there, and that it is something we will look at and watch for in preparation for FY '25.
Yeah, no, and what Christine said, 100%, like, that's great, like, yes, no, I get that, being liable and everything, bonded and everything, but I think going back off of what Jim was saying, a little bit more,
Okay.
don't come and present something, be like, well, we have option 1, option 2, and oh, guess what, we just got option 3. Well, wait a second, we just been sitting here.
Are you both comfortable with Sean doing the write-up and representing what you talk about, or do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can also help Sean,
I would,
connect
okay.
100%.
I like
would
that.
to have that conversation,
Being-
because I feel that this is
Yeah.
one.
I have a suggestion, Sean, if you would work with Lauren, who's volunteered,
Yeah, I can help.
do your write-up, send it to Lauren, you make sure that it represents the thoughts of you and
Yeah,
Jim,
for
okay?
sure, and also considering this is his first time here.
Okay, all right.
I can help him.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, now we get to the planning board articles. Planning board 1, amendments to zoning bylaw related to earth material movement. Any questions or concerns? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Phil?
Oh, go ahead.
We
Yes,
got-
I'll second.
Thank you.
Phil?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Lahem? George Morone?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Okay, planning board 2, amendments to zoning bylaw related to sustainability. Can I get a motion?
Well, I think that,
Oh, I'm sorry, any discussion,
yeah,
excuse me.
as amended, I'm much happier with it than as it was first drafted. So
Excellent.
I will highly recommend and move that we approve this.
Well, are we voting or are we still
Still
discussing?
Still talking.
I'm sorry.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, I see a lot of good intent in this article. My only regret is that there are too many votes in one article. My big contention is 7.3.8. I think there's a lot of language with the proper intent to improve renewable sources. However, the words discretional, subjective, dipping our toe, our first appearance, still needs to be worked out, and I find some of these provisions too burdensome on owners or developers, particularly the necessity for an analysis of greenhouse gas impacts, when everything in here says improve on what you already have regarding renewable energy. So, my report would be simply, yep, I added more green space, or I added more, what do you call them, halogen lights, or whatever. But I think the additional costs of some of these things are going to adversely impact development or buildings in the community. I think we can do it with less of an impact and work on it with less subjective ideas. Again, how do we prevent adverse effects of energy consumption in neighboring structures? You talked about, interfering with solar panels, but with the setback in solar panels, I don't think that applies, and I don't even know how you begin to put an objective standard on that.
You know what? You've convinced me that there's way too much in this article for one article.
It should be
That
broken up.
it would have been far better if they broke it into separate chunks, even though it modified the same provision in the bylaw.
I have no objection with the recharging stations, but as a whole, I have to decline this one.
I think, just to echo some of those sentiments, I do have an issue with the charging stations. I mean, one of the arguments was demand, and if there's demand, then, owners of commercial property would voluntarily do it, they'd gladly do it if there was demand and they can make a profit on it. Why would the town have to mandate it if there was demand, right? So, to me, that's a little bit of I'm conflicted about that argument, and, I think putting a burden on commercial property owners for something that, is still relatively new and not proven, is just premature to mandate. Mandate's a strong action for a town, so.
I would agree with the comments. The other thing I'd add relative to the charging stations is I have an issue with town-owned property, like the Deerfield Hamlin School, when it's gonna go on those, and the taxpayers are gonna be paying for it because they're not charging people. And if I have an electric vehicle, I'm gonna go to where it's free, not to where it's not free. So
Well-
I have an issue with that. In addition, that's part of the issue that I had.
I've got an issue with that too, but that's not part of this. I mean, whether the town charges for town-installed charging station is a policy issue that the select board needs to address as a new revenue source.
Right, but I have to support
but
an
that-
article
that's-
that mandate more charging stations.
Right.
Right.
Other comments, questions?
I also had an issue with the charging station too, because, all right, great, Eversource, they're putting it in, wonderful. It's 2023, all right, but what about though the maintenance, let's say in 2040? Who's taking care of that? And so, however the connections, I'm not an engineer, an electrician, whatever, but I'm guessing there it is, you gotta dig up the ground, see what's going on. There's a cost to that. And then also too, with now there's, obviously, everything's going up in cost. But we couldn't get a number of basically the maintenance of it, future. And then also too, where the planning board, they came, was it 125% or something like that? But they couldn't, again, back to the data. Well, how'd you come up with that number? How'd you figure that out? So I just can't. But the problem is though too, back to also what Jim and Chris are saying, this article is very big, so it's like the rest of the stuff, I have no problem with, but then it's just because of basically the electrical, the charging stations, I do have an issue with it, so I'm gonna have to vote no.
Any other,
I'm gonna be a dissenting opinion. I love sustainability, and I think the more we move in that direction, I'm a strong proponent of it. It's not a perfectly written article, I'll admit that, but we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're not trying to solve the perfect, and I think that the issues I have are outweighed by the positives that this does.
I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't quite, so that,
The issues I have with some of the minor points that have been made
right,
are outweighed by the benefit of moving forward in this important initiative.
I hear you, right? It is good to be on the leading edge of some of this stuff, but I think what Jim convinced me of is that too many times when the first crack of some of this is done, you use terms that are undefined, you use terms that are very ambiguous, and that leads to problems down the road. My prediction is that if the town meeting passes this article, then we will see changes and amendments to this article for 5 years in a row down the road. Well, we gotta tweak this, we gotta tweak that, we gotta tweak this. And not because of experience with it, but just because the drafters realize, well, wait a minute, this isn't such a hot idea. Or we need to more objectively define this, so that's my problem with it right now. Jim convinced me of it.
I guess my question would be, is that, with an understanding that there might be tweaks made to any article, are we solving for perfect? And so are we looking to have it be, and this is a valid question, I'm not trying to be confrontational, but there is a lot in this. Are we looking for them to either break it up or to, make sure every piece of it is solid and we vote on that in totality? So if the answer is yes, then I would change my vote as well.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you actually just kind of said it yourself right there. Because there's so much, we're not asking it to be perfect. And we actually just all went back to that saying, it's not a perfect article, but it is actually, and I 100% sustainability, no, get it, of course, that's a very good thing. But if this is a big deal to a lot of people, a lot of towns, a lot of residents, then get it right. Don't do it like this. So it is kind of, you sort of answered your own question, yeah, we should break it up. This article, for something like a big deal like this, and the charging station, then whatever that, that part, and then the dumpster, and then it's I'm all for the dumpsters, that's great, but because of just this first part, it's, I can't.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, to say are we striving for perfect, I think that's a little bit of an overstatement, because I think we've come up with several glaring either omissions or, like, the thing that I can't get over is it doesn't even consider the business model. So what if a convenience store pops up and it's got 26 spaces? A convenience store is an in and out, you know, bottle of Gatorade or a pack of gum. Who's gonna charge their car going to a convenience store? And that the burden on, so now you can say, this would actually prohibit some business owners from opening a business in Westwood because of that. And, you know, it might be one factor among many. I'm all for sustainability too, but it's just not, I don't think it's designed, you know, thoughtfully enough for us to, the word mandate is strong in my mind. When you mandate a business to do something and spend money, it's gotta be deliberate and thoughtful enough. As opposed to just, we wanna head in this direction and it's the right idea. Like, that to me isn't enough.
I think that the nature of this article is to mandate, though. The nature of it is to not allow people to come in and make it a call on their own, to push people to have sustainability in the front of what they're doing. So again, I have similar issues, even the 25%. Like, if the demand is, you know, higher, you know, then they should benefit from it. So is it 30, is it 40? There's a lot of questions, but good debate.
To make a motion for indefinite postponement.
Second.
Ooh. So you have to do a roll call.
Bill?
All right, just to be clear now, if you're voting yes, you're voting for indefinite postponement.
Right.
Did I mess that up?
No?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question. Indefinite, so it cannot be brought back to the board in piece separately?
No, that's not true.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
No, but we're
It
voting on, no.
Clarification, please.
To answer Angela's question.
No, it's either up or down.
Yeah, it's either, we're voting on the entire article as written. They cannot come back and amend the article at this point in
They have to
time.
break it up and change it.
Okay, that would be a future time.
Or
But
rewrite it or
next year,
whatever.
they can bring it up in parts.
And bring it up in parts.
Right.
That's,
I believe that would be accurate.
So where are we now? So,
Someone could also move to amend the article on the floor of town.
okay, so where are we now?
Well, I said Bill and, okay. John?
No.
Jim?
Yes?
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Change my vote, yes.
George Hertz?
No.
Angelo?
Yes.
George Lahem?
yes.
George Maroon?
Yes.
Christina?
No.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
No.
And Alex?
Yes.
So what's that vote now? It's
7 to 5
I had 4 no's.
or 4?
I could be wrong.
There's 3 people that said no.
okay, so how many voted? So we have
12.
we have 12 people voting?
Yeah.
So it
Oh,
was
13.
13.
13, so it
Including
was, it's 10 yes, 3 no. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. Look, a very, very healthy discussion, and I respect the discussion. So my question here is, Caitlin, who was not here, was supposed to be writing up this article, correct?
Yes.
And I don't know if she's, I really think that somebody else really should probably write this article up who's been here. And so there is a, who wants to write this article up? Because I think it needs to reflect the issues that were raised.
I was on the subcommittee with her, so I'd be happy to, but I'm also in the minority. So if you want majority opinion, right?
Are you?
left the conference.
Okay, Alex, so let's talk this over. What, the folks who voted no, what do you think? Would one of you want to write up the majority opinion?
Who voted yes for indefinite postponement?
Yes, whoever voted yes for indefinite
I got
postponement.
2 others. I can't get.
I'll do it.
Okay, all right. And then those of us who voted against indefinite postponement, I would reflect that. I think what you need to reflect is that probably a little bit more flexibility in supporting the overall concept.
I joined the conference.
Welcome back, Alex. A little bit a little bit of flexibility to the planning board and understanding that the article isn't perfect, a recognition that there was a lot included in it. And maybe at a previous meeting, I wish we had picked this up. We could have recommended maybe earlier that they break it out into separate articles. But I think the intent and plan, that was well-intentioned, and I think that Mike, in his initial comments, I think he respected the majority, basically said that I think the overall goal is fairly important. But I very much respect and the decision that the FinCom made, and I guess my only guidance to the planning board was, break it up into 3 articles and bring it back to us for next town meeting, okay? But a very, very healthy discussion, thank you.
I just want to make sure, Victoria, do we have 3 or 4 people voting?
Well, I think it's George Hertz, Harry, myself, and Christine.
Okay, 4.
So 4, so 9 to 4.
9 to 4, okay. And I don't really think, I'll ask those of us who are on the minority side, I don't really think there needs to be a minority report on this.
I don't know that there I have to agree with what everyone kind of brought to the table. I think
Yeah.
it was some very good points. I think there were parts of each of the segments of this that we could have a really robust discussion around, and
Right.
bring it all to us in one package makes it
Okay.
challenging, but I happen to be of a generation, a mindset that sustainability can't wait.
Yeah.
So if there was one maybe aspect of the minority opinion that I'd like to have reflected, is that I think it's incredibly important for us to move the needle forward. We're kind of moving in a directionally correct way, even if we're.
Then what I would like to have happen here is, George, if you would, I would like you to put your thoughts in writing, representing the 4 of us who voted against indefinite postponement, and get those to George to include in his report.
Sure.
Okay?
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think, Sean, what's good about that is you can explain that maybe dividing it up, there was support clearly for sustainability, and one of the solutions would be dividing the article up more digestible, okay? But very, very healthy discussion. All right. Thank you. Let's go to, we're on number 3?
Yeah.
Okay, discussion on Article 3.
No one likes dumpsters.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Motion approved, planning board Article 3.
Second.
Okay, will you take the roll call?
Bill? John?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
George Lahem?
Yes.
George Morone?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Alex? Oh, sorry, Alex dropped off.
No, he's back.
Take it back.
No, he's off.
Oh,
the
he's
call.
off? Okay. Hold on, we don't have to, if he's off the call, do we have to do roll calls? Good.
He wants to go home.
Alex, I love you, but, okay.
We only have 2 more to go.
And we only have, yeah, 2 more.
All right, 2 more, so we're up to like 4, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's get housekeeping amendments to zoning bylaw. Can I get any discussion?
Second.
Okay, let's, all those in favor? Okay,
12 zip.
okay. And then, let's go to Planning Board 5, amendments to general bylaws related to dumpsters. Is there any discussion?
So moved. Second?
To approve, right?
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, unanimous. All right, we're done with the voting. Now, a few more things before we adjourn, and that is, first of all, for those of you who terms are expiring, the process as follows. If you would like to get reappointed, which I would, given the quality of this board, I would strongly encourage you to do, please send a request into Victoria addressed to the town moderator, respectfully requesting that you be reappointed if you so desire, and she will get those to Jim O'Sullivan, and then he will make his decision. The other thing is we generally have our reorganization, well, Victoria has the authority to set up a organization meeting. It generally has been done in June. I'll give everybody a chance to break, but we'll try and do it at a convenient time for everybody so we can get together and form the committee for next year. Let me just, the agenda, Chris. Okay. That was my chairman's update. Are there any other issues or concerns? Oh, I'm sorry.
For terms expiring in 2022 or
2023. So your term would be up as of town meeting, okay? at the end of
Chairman
town-
of town meeting.
Yeah, at the end of town meeting. But really, I think this has been, I mean, we've tried some very new things this year. The new subcommittee structure, which at that June meeting, I really want to get some feedback from you folks. And I think this has been a very healthy discussion. I'm really happy that some of the newer members have felt very comfortable expressing their concerns and asking their questions. So you don't need to sit back on the second bench like in Parliament and wait. You can jump in right away. And we will continue the mentoring program. We all have our mentors. I know that George Moon and I are going to get together for coffee over the next couple of weeks. And I think that's something we will continue, I hopefully will continue when we reorganize after Victoria calls the meeting. Article write-ups are due on the 31st. I think we've got, a couple of them are challenging, but I think a lot of them are fairly pro forma. Yeah, Friday, so please get those to Victoria. And Chris Beretta has actually reformatted all the subcommittee reports because we didn't really want to put PowerPoint slides.
Except for the education.
We're waiting for the education. Yes, we'll get that all done.
Get that as soon as you
And then
can.
I know that Chris and I and Victoria will be doing a lot of reading and, this weekend, to make sure we get things published in time. So any other comments, concerns from FinCom members?
I think George just thanks this year for
Yeah.
getting them in front of us sooner. Like, there was no big surprises at the end, like a lot of
Thank
years.
you.
Yeah.
And I felt like this meeting went smooth tonight because, you know, they were in front of us. We'd seen it a bunch of times, asked a lot of questions, so
Thank
thanks
you.
for
I second
helping
that.
around
Thank
Both
you.
for you.
Well, I
and
think
Chris.
also, I mean, to some extent, everybody, we had 5 subcommittees. Everybody worked, which was great. And, you know, I want to get some feedback from you when we get together in June, but thank you so very much for those comments, Bill. Personally, it's been a pleasure working with you. I've just really enjoyed this, and I think this is one heck of a good group. And I think town meeting hopefully will be very comfortable with our recommendations. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, what else? I'm sorry, what else?
The meeting minutes.
Oh, meeting minutes, meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our March 14th meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor? Hey,
Quick before Alex jumps.
anybody opposed?
Abstaining, here.
I
Okay,
abstain as well.
okay, all right, 2 abstentions. Is that it? Would you get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you all very, very, very much.
Way too much.